Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, said Nelson Mandela. As we gather here today, let us cherish this opportunity to wield the power of education to create a positive change in our lives and in the world.
Good morning, esteemed guests, faculty, and students. We are delighted to welcome you all to this much anticipated event, the International Conference on Fiesta of the Mind, exploring food and English literature in interdisciplinary horizon, organized by the Department of English.
We are gathered here at our prestigious Dr. N.G.P. Arts and Science College at Seminar Hall 2, C1 block on this beautiful morning. This program is a significant initiative to guide and inspire the future learners. Prayer is the key of the morning and the bolt of the evening, said Mahatma Gandhi.
As we unlock the possibilities of this day, let us begin with a soulful moment of prayer, brought to us by our talented college choir. Please rise and join us in this melody of devotion. Thank you, girls. The light of lamp dispels the darkness of ignorance, just as education illuminates the path of wisdom and understanding. Now I request all the dignitaries to light the kutuvalukku as a sign of dignity.
Wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. Now, I request our most distinguished head, Department of English, Dr. A. Hazel Wabina ma'am, to deliver the welcome address.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. A very warm and delightful morning, esteemed guests, distinguished speakers, and participants. It's my great honor to welcome you all to the International Conference on the Fiesta of the Mind, exploring food and English literature in interdisciplinary horizons. As we gather here today, we are not just participants in a conference, we are a part of a vibrant community dedicated to exploring the rich intersection between culinary arts and literary expression. It's great pleasure to welcome Dr. Anita Devi Pillai, an accomplished academic and researcher at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University. Dr. Pillai's expertise spans English language pedagogy, literary studies, academic writing, and communication skills. With over a decade of experience at NIE, she has earned multiple prestigious awards, including the Excellence in Teaching Commendation for NIE in 2018, and 2 Teaching Merit Awards from the Singapore University of Social Sciences. I welcome you, ma'am. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Sweta Antony, University of Delhi, a distinguished professor whose academic journey spans across diverse fields within literature and the humanities. Her expertise extends beyond traditional literary studies into the fascinating realms of food studies, film studies, and environmental humanities, among others. I welcome you, ma'am. It's my honor to welcome Dr. Darshana Samaravira, the Deputy Director General of the Faculty of Languages, Humanities and Social Sciences at the National Institute of Education in Sri Lanka. His research spans a wide range of crucial fields, including curriculum theory, teacher education, language education, education management and policy, and other areas related to development. His work continues to make a significant impact on the education in Sri Lanka. I welcome you, sir. It's my greatest pleasure to welcome Dr. J. Mangekarasi, Academic Head, Ethraj College for Women, Chennai, an esteemed educator with over 2 decades of experience in teaching English language and literature at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. I welcome you, ma'am. At this juncture, I'm truly honored to warmly welcome our esteemed chairman, Dr. Nallaji Palaniswamy. He's a remarkable source of inspiration and motivation for all of us, exemplifying the traits of philanthropist and a caring figure similar to a fatherly guardian. I welcome him in his absence. I would like to warmly welcome our respected guardian, Madam Secretary, Dr. Daumani D. Palaniswamy. Her unwavering commitment to the progress and welfare to the student community is truly admirable. I welcome her in her absence. Furthermore, I extend my heartfelt welcome to our revered Managing Trustee, Dr. Arun N. Palaniswamy, Trustee, the renowned Mrs. Madhura, whose contributions have been instrumental in shaping the vision of this conference. I welcome them in the absence. It is with utmost gratitude I render my heartfelt welcome to our most respected principal, Dr. S. Saravanan, the pillar of strength and motivation, whose unending support and gratitude has made this conference happen. I welcome him in his absence. I'm happy to convey my most prestigious welcome to our most respected director, academics, Dr. K. Ramamurthy, for his valuable insights and supports in all aspects of organizing this conference. I welcome him in his absence. I extend my warmest welcome to our Dean, Dr. K. Kalimuthu. I welcome him in his absence. I also welcome our most beloved Director Academics, Dr. P.R. Muthusamy, CEO Dr. O.T. Bhuvaneshwaran, COO Dr. Annotation, Controller of Examinations, Deans of various portfolios, Heads of various departments, staff and students of the Department of English, and the participants from various colleges. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our distinguished keynote speakers and panelists who have graciously accepted our invitation to share their insights and expertise. Your contributions are invaluable to the success of this gathering. I also extend my gratitude to the organizing committee and volunteers whose hard work has made this event possible. I want to express my heartfelt welcome to all the participants, both online and offline, for your presence here today. Together, let us create an atmosphere filled with curiosity, creativity, and camaraderie. I look forward to the enlightening discussion ahead and hope that this conference inspires new insights and collaborations. Coming together is a success. Coming together is a beginning. Staying together in progress. And working together is success. I welcome you all once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Indeed, it was a warm welcome. It's time for us to honor our dignitaries with bouquet and memento. Now I request Dr. A. Hazel Verbina ma'am, Head of the Department of English, to honor our resource person, Dr. Anita Devi Pillai, Senior Professor, Nanyang University, Singapore, with a bouquet and memento as a symbol of honor and gratitude. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Vidya Prabha ma'am, Professor, to honor our resource person, Dr. Darshana Samavira sir, Deputy Director General, the National Institute of Education, Sri Lanka. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. C. Divya, Professor, to honor our resource person, Dr. Shweta Antony, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Nagalakshmi ma'am, Head of the Assistant Professor, to honor our Dr. J. Mangari, Author and Academic Head, PG and Research, Department of English, Ethiraj College for Women, Chennai.
Thank you, ma'am. I request Dr. V. Madhuramoli ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to honor Dr. A. Hazel Verbina ma'am, Head, Department of English, with a bouquet. Thank you, ma'am.
Now we have come to the most significant part of the program, the release of conference proceeding. I request the dignitaries on the dais to unwrap the proceedings. I request the dignitaries to receive the proceeding. I request the dignitaries on the dais to unwrap the proceeding. Thank you, dignitaries. Now we welcome Dr. V. Madhuramoli ma'am, Assistant Professor, to invite the first eminent speaker for the day, Dr. Anita Pillai Devi, Senior Professor, Nanyang University, Singapore.
A very good morning to the splendid gathering of enlightened minds. As we probe into this food tabulous, yes, not fantabulous, but food tabulous topic, one cannot forget what Francis Bacon once said, I quote, "Some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested." Yes, literature many a times demonstrates how food vocabulary plays a pivotal role in its representation. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and privilege to be the opening batsman, as my good friend said, of this great match of a different kind an edifying kind, an illuminating kind, a flavorsome kind. With great delight, I take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Anita Devi Pillai, to this sapient gathering. Dr. Anita is an applied linguist, teacher educator, and an illustrious author. She teaches courses on literacy, writing pedagogy, academic writing, and creative writing at the Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. Dr. Anita is best known for her extensive research on the language and heritage of the Singapore Malayali community. Her work titled From Kerala to Singapore, Voices from the Singapore Malayali Community got published in the year 2013, supported by the grant from National Heritage Board, Singapore. For this study, she received the Pravasi Express Excellence Award in 2017. In 2021, she received a fellowship from the National Heritage Board, Singapore, to further her research, and in 2022, she was appointed guest curator of the first ever national exhibition on Malayalis in Singapore. As an accomplished writer and editor, Dr. Anita has authored and edited several creative and non-fictional works, including a translation of the historical fiction Sembavang, a novel which was released in 2020 from Tamil to English. The translation was shortlisted for the NUS International History Prize and the National Best Literary Book Award in 2022. Her works that explores the themes of identity, heritage, and culture have international reach and are studied not only in Singapore, but also in Australia, Philippines, and of course, India. Dr. Anita also serves on several government boards, including Tamil Language Council, Publications Consultative Panel, and the Indian Community Oral History Committee. She is also the president of the Singapore Association for Applied Linguistics. A person of such excellence, a phenomenal personality, has been duly recognized and adored with a lot of laurels from the people of Singapore. Yes, Dr. Anita is a recipient of 3 Teaching Excellence Award from her university for her dedication to the academic arena. As the crowning glory, Dr. Anita was honored with the National Day Commendation Medal by the Singapore government for her contributions to education and heritage in 2024. Without any further delay, it's time for us to welcome our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Anita Devi Pillai, to deliver the inaugural address on creative writing in the 21st century curriculum, innovations, implementation, and the role of AI. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Anita Devi Pillai to address the gathering.
I request the dignitaries to take their respective seats off the dais.
I request the students to maintain the silence, please.
So I don't mind the
இது வைக்க முடியாது மேம் இங்கே தான் வைக்க முடியும் ஏன்னா ஹெச்டிஎம் சின்னதாக இருக்குது இல்லைன்னா வெயிலில் ஏதாவது இருந்ததுன்னா கேபிடி உள்ளே போட்டுட்டு இல்லைன்னா லேப் அங்கே வச்சுக்கலாம் பெட்டராக இருக்கா இது போட்டுக்கலாம் ஹாட்ஸ்பாட் போட்டுக்கலாம்
வேறு லேப்டாப்பில் நான் ஓப்பன் திறக்க மாட்டேன் சாரி மன்னிக்கிச்சுங்க உங்கள் ஈமெயில் எனக்கு அனுப்புறதே இருக்கு ஐ டோன்ட் மைண்ட் சென்டிங் இட் பண்ணியிருக்கேன். But you think will be safer. It's embedded, so it should work. Yeah. No, just copy that one file. It's what I want to copy. Because it's a very heavy file, I have a video in it as well. I added in the students' video yesterday, so I thought it would be fun to show them. Hi, Jack. ஆமாம் சொன்னோம் நான் உண்மையிலே அவங்க சொன்னாங்க நான் தான் சொன்னேன் I'm worried about sharing it. So இது வந்து we don't have a choice here. So I'm worried about sharing it because I don't have permission to share it as a video. I've got permission to show it. Why don't we do that? Fantastic.
By the time this will get
Yes. Please do that.
tea break then we can even test out this. We'll finish this with it, we'll start. Students break. Announce பண்ணிடுங்க. Aishwarya, announce the tea break is near seminar hall 1 downstairs.
It's all right. Tea break விடுங்க. Then I can test it out as well. Sure. So ஒரு video இருக்கு. We can play break.
All the participants to have their refreshment near the seminar hall 1 underground, same floor. Participants. All the participants to have their refreshment near seminar hall 1. Yes, yes. Yes, you can.
We'll break the session for refreshments. I request all the participants to have their refreshments at Seminar Hall 1 downstairs. The session will start within 15 minutes. I request all the participants to have their refreshments downstairs. The session will begin within 15 minutes.
One month ago, I found out that my
Thank you for helping me. Thanks, Pa. Thanks. And the student கிட்ட thank you சொன்னேன் சொல்லு.
Singapore to share her innovative ideas on creative writing in the 21st century curriculum, innovation, implementation, and the role of AI.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, my sincere apologies for the delay. And it's an irony, of course, that I'm speaking about technology here today, right? And that's the first thing that happens, that you have all these glitches. So I'm Dr. Anita Devi Pillai. I'm here from Singapore. I teach at Nanyang Technological University, where I've been for the last 20-odd years. I've been teaching there for 20-odd years. And my speech today, thank you. I did think that a lot of my photographs were going to be really flowery. Today I'm here with you to discuss a topic, to share with you some ideas. I would think that's how I'd pitch it. Creative writing in the 21st century curriculum. I'm going to be talking about some of the, what do we do, what do I mean, why is it important? And I'm hoping to leave you with some ideas. I'm hoping to leave you with some things to think about. I'm also going to be very realistic about the challenges that you face. Yeah? Thanks for coming in and settling in so quickly, yeah? So an overview of my talk is I'll talk about how it's a growing field. It was interestingly because creative writing has never been seen as something important enough to be placed right next to linguistics or physics as as something, a subject that is equivalent. So I'm going to be talking to you about the growing field. I'm going to give you a case study. Very briefly, I'm going to talk to you about why creative writing, how do we make room for this new player, and of course, the challenges in the paradigm shift. My audience is made up, I realize, of predominantly a lot of students as well as some academics. I understand people are joining us from online as well today. So, and I guess it's the same profile of audience online. So I would be happy to take questions later. So creative writing, the growing importance. Now, traditionally, a lot of universities across the world, when you talk about the Department of English, has had linguistics, literature. In some places, theater studies has been included as well, in the English language, and they'll call it English language and arts, etc. But linguistics and literature has always been a main player. They're two main players. The inclusion of creative writing in the last few years and the rapid expansion in the last 2-3 years it's interesting. It is something that you need to take note of. There is space for it, right? Because with linguistics, what do we focus on? We focus on structure, function, use of language. It's phonetics. We look at, of course, grammar as well as semantics, right? With literature, we look at how do we explore meaning through culture and human experience? The whole topic today for the conference, food fiction, how do we experience this through written work? If linguistics provides you tools for analyzing the language, then, sorry, I didn't click on the slide. I'm on to the second slide already. Hang on, yeah, guys, I had moved on, but I clearly hadn't switched. Okay. This was my overview and எப்படிப்பா? Okay, this is a slide I was on. I'm going to be balancing, trying to multitask here. Let me see if I can pull this off. So with linguistics, we provide you with the tools to analyze language. With literature, we provide you with the lens to understand human experience. What does creative writing then do as the third subject that comes into play here? As an independent subject, it equips individuals to create and communicate compelling narratives. With linguistics, if linguistic studies show you how language works, literature shows you what can be done, and creative writing looks at what can be written, right? It combines both linguistic precision and the exploration of new creation of text. And therein lies my interest with this subject and why I am here promoting it as an independent subject to be set up. My background is in applied linguistics. My PhD is in applied linguistics. I studied, my PhD doctoral thesis was on writing and literacy, and I went on to do major projects on community literacy practices. You heard in my profile, they mentioned my work with the Malayali community in Singapore. I predominantly focus on how language is used in the community, what they do. But given, I also have this pedagogical research area which focuses on writing. Now, the perfect match and marriage between the two was when I started looking at creative work that was being written, and when I started, and it brings together all these different disciplines. It's very multidisciplinary by nature. It's also got a theoretical framework for one to be able to justify and argue for it to have a place amongst us, amongst the other subjects. Very quickly, as I mentioned earlier, many universities have now established dedicated programs for creative writing. These are some of the universities. You've got Jhumpa Lahiri, of course, heading Columbia's program. Iowa University is one of the forefront runners for the longest time. East Anglia was the first in UK. New Zealand, and we joined them in Singapore. As having established, and we are in the midst of establishing even more modules. So in Singapore, the undergraduates are able to do creative writing as a major or a minor. You also are able to do it at doctoral level, right? Right now you're able to, we've just started that and they're able to study it. You can choose to do it as a minor as well. So I'm not sure how you do it here. If you have two majors, then one of your majors that you select could be creative writing as a major, right? We also have a very highly competitive IB school that offers international baccalaureate and in it as well, we have creative writing as a component, as a subject that's being studied. A lot of new modules have been included. Those who have been skeptical about it in the beginning, what happened was they got modules introduced, right? Modules like digital storytelling, modules like creative writing prose, creative writing fiction. You know, they had little modules that were introduced initially. So just one module to be taken along with the English Lit classes. Mind you, the students who came in from the Lit background, literature majors, they found the fact that they are now creating work. It took them a little getting used to it. They liked it. They took it to duck to water, but it took them a little while to get used to the fact that they were now the creators, right? My linguistic students who came in, you know, linguistics is a very, very systematic study of things, right? You know, it's all, let me break it down into bite size, let me decontextualize things. Whereas with literature, we sink in, we embrace it, we experience things, and then we want to know what it means. So when the linguistics majors come in, they're ready to write, but they want a formula. And that's when I go, hey, it's creative writing. I can't be giving you a formula. I can get you to experience things. So both parties actually break free from the mold that they're used to, right? And I do think that it helps them expand their understanding of language. And certainly at the end of 13 weeks, each module is delivered for 13 weeks, we certainly make a lot of changes in it. Okay, so with the students, sorry, I had this slide in front of me. I didn't show this to you. This was what I was talking about a minute ago. In UK and Australia, where the GCE A-level examination and GCE O-level and GCSE exams are offered, right? Creative writing component has now become one of the components that the teachers teach, as well as they offer for exams as well. And this includes sometimes portfolio writing, of course, and often writing under exam conditions. It is becoming an increasingly important part and a skill that a 21st century student would have to have when they go out to work. But why?
why include creative writing? It's something that you do when, after the exams, let's do some activities. You finish all your exams and then you go and do some activities. You invite someone to come and do a workshop. And one day maybe you invite a famous author to come and deliver a speech. Why include it as a subject? Is there enough? Is it important enough? As we are setting this up, these are questions that no one wants to tell you what you're doing is fluff, right? But that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, what does creative writing have? And how dare you compare it to physics or chemistry? How dare you say you got a degree and come out and say it's creative writing? Actually, there is a lot to it. And from a systematic perspective, if you're looking at the curriculum, there is a theoretical framework. There is a certain method of study that is distinctly different. There is a different way. It's a different way of thinking, and it's not everybody's cup of tea, but neither is any subject, right? Oh, the other thing we face when we were setting it up is, you have, preaching to the converted, right? So you have a group of people who are passionate about creative writing. They were like, this is exactly what I was looking for. And then you have this whole group of people who are not convinced it's good enough. So you've got to be able to balance the two as well. Now, why is creative writing necessary in this world? Why is it becoming a subject that's not just taken by those who think they're born with this talent? Only the talented few can do the subject and do well. Creative writing cannot be taught. You have to be born with it. It's something that my dad told me once as well. I don't think it's true at all. You can deconstruct, like all subjects. All teachers can deconstruct the whole process because it is systematic in a way. It's just that it's not explicit in the way it is. And the deconstruction is not obvious to those who are outside of that creative writing pedagogy. So creative writing is a necessary skill in this fast-changing world. It certainly is able to nurture critical thinking, originality, and empathy among students. It helps students to connect ideas, right? And this is a valuable skill in any job. It offers you benefits way beyond the classroom, of course, right? And when you think about other subjects, so we've got students who do creative writing as a minor with other majors, and we've got science students, and some of my science students write so brilliantly and are able to produce text and digital videos, just brilliant storytelling, right from a classroom assignment. And I'm going to show you a classroom assignment that a student did in a bit as well. So it's got nothing to do with which discipline you come from, but what they do leave my classes with is, at the end of the day, they leave with knowing that you don't just tell someone something, you craft a narrative. You tell them a story. So everything needs to be a story that people remember, because people don't remember the content, right? They remember the story you tell them, isn't it? So that's the skill that you're able to bring into the classroom. You're able to equip the child with before the student leaves the room. So how do we then make room for this new player? Mind you, we've had a lot of pushback even in Singapore, which a country where we don't have natural resources, right? So what do we depend on? Our people, our resources. We even water, drinking water, we have to purchase it. We purchase everything. I mean, from milk to vegetables, everything comes at least a day old, right? I mean, we don't have anything that we're able to produce in that country. So the focus has always been on being very efficient. Let's do manufacturing, let's do, engineering is always, apart from medicine and law, engineering is the king, right? I think that's the same for any country these days. But, and so we've had a lot of pushback from these sectors as well. And yet, there is a whole growing group of people who understand that there is value in including this. So what they have done is they've done like sometimes incorporating some activities or assignments that would incorporate storytelling. And that's how they've integrated it into the curriculum. And they find different ways of including it even in STEM classes. And we often are able to read about this, and there's a journal called Creative Writing Pedagogy Journal. You can look that up. There are creative writing journals specifically and websites specifically focused on promoting this and to be giving ideas, because it is fairly, it's not new, I would say, but it is increasingly gaining prominence. So that's when people look for different ways of embracing it. Okay. And when you want to do this, if you were to say, let's start with, let's include it now in creative writing into our classes, or as a separate module. That's what I'm talking about, right? Perhaps one way in which you could do this is through what is closest to someone's heart. And what is closest to your heart? I don't want a scientific answer here. What is closest to your heart? What is the one thing people always talk about? So I can't hear anything. I know you're mumbling, but that's telling each other, huh? Okay. Family, certainly. And what's one thing family does together? Food. Food. The whole theme is food fiction. Food, right? And you know, I kid you not, and I'm not saying this because that's a theme here. We too started with that because we realized that when we incorporated mini activities, and we started off actually with digital storytelling. Predominantly, the stories that came through had something to do with family, which, you know, I'll show you in the video in a bit. And it always had to do with some aspect of food. There is no discussion of family, no discussion of community or relationships without some reference to food. You know, it's somehow something that binds us. The speakers here today, that's all we've been talking about. We've been talking about all the different lovely food we've had from the time we landed at Coimbatore Airport till now, till a couple of minutes ago, and everything has been something different, right? Why? Because food captivates, and food is able to, from a very linguistic perspective, generate language readily and quickly. And that sort of conversation, when you translate it into a classroom, the English language teacher is thrilled because my students are speaking. My students have something to say. My students have something to say that's concrete, and it's coming from different places, right? Food fiction is a fabulous place to start. It helps. Why? Some of the reasons why food fiction is important, right? It captures the essence of cultures. So Prof was talking to me about Teh Tarik in Singapore, Prof Darshana. You know, Teh Tarik is a Malay word. Teh is chai, tea, right? And Tarik is a Malay word that just means pooled. It means pooled. Pooled as in to cool down the tea, because you make it with piping hot water. To cool down the tea, there's this movement that they do. Right? I've never been successful at it. So my tea is always hot. If you want, I'll put an ice cube in it, it'll be fine. That's what I tell my son. But this whole pooling thing will mean the whole kitchen will get messed up and my helper will kick me out. So it's a skill. So Teh Tarik. Any you know, the things, what do you remember about a place you go to? You remember food. And to me, the minute he said that, it was a Malay word. It was so iconic of Singapore. And it is, we always, because it's post-colonial, right? I mean, it's a colonial country. Tea is something we bond over. If there's an issue, if people are fighting, let's have tea and cake and let's talk. Tea and cookies, let's talk. Let's sit down. It's very British, right? You know, let's sit down over tea. And I think Sri Lanka, Singapore, India, we all have that connection. Food is the essence of culture. You capture so many things. And the minute someone tells you, I'm from this place, and you tell them about the food, you immediately connect with the person, right? Now, and the traditions that come with it, the pooling of the tea is nothing specific to Singapore. It's everywhere in the world. It's just that it's a Malay word and it connected, right? So one way in which food, you know, that's one of the reasons why food fiction is very important. I'm going to give you a couple more. Of course, I included examples we could use in each. Oh, my slides are not. So sorry, guys. You've been dependent on me to say all these things, and to me, I'm looking at my slides, and of course, it didn't come in. Let me just show you my slides, okay? This is where I was. I say, how do we make room for a new player? And I was talking to you about this, about STEM. I gave you some of the points. I'm not reading my slides. I'm quite mindful of the time. I have promised Dr. Hazel that I will leave my slides with her. So if you need the notes, please feel free to It's all in full sentences, so you can feel free to refer to it. So this is where I was earlier on, food fiction, close to your heart, food fiction. And this is the slide I'm on. So I was just going to say that I have, for each of the points, I have included an example of what can be done in the classroom with all of us, what we can do. But, but I'm not going to go through that. I'll just tell you why it's important, right? Cultural preservation and exploration, it connects people. Okay, it's an emotional connection, right? I mean, memories of childhood memories, relationships, it's a very rich medium for storytelling. Everyone has a story to tell about food. Everyone. Negative, positive, everyone. When you want to make it, when you want to have a goodwill gesture, food is the easiest, right? I mean, food is the easiest to give and take, right? So readers connect emotionally to food as well, and food-related narratives are, that's what people remember. I read that story, and I remember reading about this. I had to study, I studied Tamil literature at grade 12 in Singapore. And there's this long poem, it's a huge long poem, and she's a housewife, and she talks about preparing the meal for the family. And I remember her dipping the jackfruit in, it's a beautiful line, right? Dipping the jackfruit in honey and eating it. And she's getting ready for the dish, and then she's thinking, oh, my child will like this. There's these, these lovely lines. I must have done my A-levels more than 30 over years ago, and A-levels is grade 12. You never ever forget descriptions of food. Somehow it sits in your heart. And I must have been 17 when I was reading these descriptions of, oh my God, she's cooking for the husband, she's cooking for the children, she's cooking. That's all she's doing, she's cooking. But now when I look back, it was like, wow, that's love. My first introduction to love was through Tamil literature, and what I remember most was these descriptions of food. Sensory engagement. The best place to start if I want to teach any student about, talking about all your 5 senses, the best place to start, because the food, the smell, the taste, the feel, in your tongue, on your fingers, and whether you use a fork and spoon, the sensory, and what it smells like. And so, these sorts, everyone has some sort of connection to the smell of food as well, right? I remember wanting to sell my apartment, and the property agent told me, can you make sure do you bake? I was like, yeah, I'm a decent baker. I said, make sure you have something baking in the oven when prospective buyers walk into the room. And so I had a bread maker. And she said, the smell of bread apparently makes people connect to the place that they're in. I don't know, if you go into a bakery this early morning, 3 a.m. and all, when the bread comes out, right? Apparently the smell of food connects you to the space right away. So I baked but I had to bake a lot of bread before the place got sold. But it certainly puts people in the right frame of mind. Every slide I go to, I can remember a story that I want to tell you, right? Likewise, the students do too. And it's got universal relevance, doesn't it? Whether you're describing angst or pleasure in any country, there are some universal things that we would do. And so stories centered around food actually transcend a lot of boundaries. And it doesn't matter whether it's from a different culture, because there's so many commonalities that one would be able to tell. I feel like I'm in a Bharatanatyam class. I'm handling this and all my different, and I wasn't, symbolism and metaphor, right. And that's what I was coming to. I was saying food certainly has a very strong connections to culture in terms of the metaphor. It is the symbolism. There are a lot of expressions, right, in English language as well. Revenge is a dish best served cold. It's one of my favorite ones. Someone with no patience at all, so when I hear that expression, it's like, oh my gosh. But there's so many lovely expressions in English, likewise in Tamil, and all languages, in fact, for that matter, that centers around food as well. And it enables writers then to explore ideas and emotions very subtly by using these sorts of symbols. So what does someone who is really fuming mad with her husband cook that day? Put the chili powder in. Or the pepper, maybe not the chili powder. Put the pepper in. Huh? Make it salty. Yeah, you see, these ideas, it's all coming from the front of the room, if you notice. The back of the room is, oh, you, Amma's cooking, huh? Yeah. No, as I tell you, all these things have, it's all symbolic, isn't it? So when you read about a character in the story, the writer is not going to tell you, the writer is certainly not, is going to show you, it's not going to tell you, right? It's not going to tell you, she was angry, so she picked up the pepper and she put it into the potato. You know, they're not going to tell that, right? That what is probably going to come through is, she doused the potato with a liberal dose of pepper, and she sprinkled something equal and sprinkled paprika on it. It was colorful like a heart or something, sometimes I read as a heart or something. So there's going to be these sorts of descriptions that come through. And as readers, what do we do? Of course, as writers, this is what we are supposed to do. As readers, what do we do? These are the subtle things that we pick up, isn't it? Why do we always have desserts? Well, why do we always serve the guest a dessert? Something sweet, right? Let's start the conversation with something sweet. The laddus are out of the world, by the way, in Coimbatore. I'm not leaving. I think I'm going to sit here and eat all the laddus. But yeah, why do we? So I just had a laddu, so that came to my mind. So why do we start? So it's symbolic of something that is sweet, symbolic of something that the taste, the sweet taste in your mouth that lingers in you afterwards. Let it be a memory of us, right? So these are all the little things that comes through in food fiction that it's harder to pull off with other genres, I feel. There are elements of food, of course, in all fiction, right? Even in crime fiction. I think I just read an excellent piece a student wrote on that was about a murder of a husband. And of course, there was a lot of food in it as well. It was a slow, subtle murder that she planned. But for that, another day, yes, another talk. Yeah. So so I know what my students are feeling when they write these stories. Right? So, yeah. I'm quite wary sometimes after the exam, my paper marking and the papers go out, then I don't accept food after that. Yes. Okay, so the exploration of identity, right? We certainly see relationships through the lens of culinary experiences, cooking together. What do you remember, learning to cook from someone, some food waiting for you when you arrive at home, a dish someone made that connects with you. I'm going to show you. I will leave all the other notes with you guys as well, right? I'm not going through each of it. So I would like to show you an example of an assignment, a class assignment a student did, and she's given me permission to share this with you. This was done as part of food fiction class that we did. She went on to then do creative writing. So I just click, where's Vishnu? I know he's missing, yes. Yeah, okay. The boy who said he will look after it, yes, he's gone, okay. Okay, let me see.
1 month ago, I found out that my aunt had a ban mian store. And I was like, oh my god, you have to teach me how to cook ban mian. And she was like, okay, just come over. And so I went. That day, I learned more than just the recipe. Here's how my day went.
Again, we try ourselves because it makes a difference of the taste. The professional is a lot because we need to cut a lot of onions, so we cut ourselves. We remove the skin after lunchtime, then we cut it and then we fry. Some customers will ask for more, so actually we very generally we give a lot also.
Is the volume so low?
So this is the key ingredient. Because we are very particular with taste. I think outside certain people put this dried fish because it's very expensive, but we don't care. We are our main point is just to get We also need to fry some fish. Most stores don't sell ban mian with fried fish, so that's what makes us special.
Ban mian is very popular in Singapore.
As I talked with my aunt, I realized this recipe wasn't her own. It was shared by my grandfather, grand-aunt, and first aunt. Today, only my second aunt is left with us. So, I sat her down and asked her about their story.
Don't know anything about hawker, but actually our passion, we like cooking and we enjoy food very much. So we call it 姐妹版面 because we partner with my sister, my elder sis, and then with my mom as well. So we operate this all in China Square. That is in 1997. I'll do the counter, I'll take the order, and then I will send it to the kitchen through the window, and I will then my aunt, my sis, they will prepare the ingredient and cook the noodles and send it through the window. I think it's very tough because the rental is very high, and then also the dishwashing charge is so much. So end up we only earn very minimum per day.
We are the other two sisters in the family, not in the business. Every time after work, I will drop by the store just to eat or just to help out. But I think it's like quite exciting for us, like when our family they were in this business.
I think it's a place to gather and then also to eat.
Yeah, because of my experience actually.
I showed you a little bit of the clip. I think, quite a fair bit of the clip, I think 2-3 minutes, right? So, this was done by a student just over the weekend, right? So it was a food fiction class, and I told them, what is the one food that you think of that is connected to your family? And for her, so what she wanted to find out was how is it made, because she's never stepped into the kitchen, she was telling me. And so how is it made, and what is the history behind the food? And she realized that her family actually ran a stall as well as a little, they call it a hawker stall. It's one of those small stalls, it's the concept of your tattukada here, like, it's the street food sort of thing, right? And her family ran that. And so she then went and interviewed them, and there are different parts of one thing she did was she got the aunt to demonstrate, so the recipe. Then she got them to talk to her about the recipe. What comes through isn't the recipe. What comes through is family relationships. What comes through is a story about how this recipe was passed down through one sister. But how, and and she goes on to talk about how businesses were run in those days in Singapore as well, because a lot of things have changed, just like India, it's not Starbucks rules in places where I used to get my brew coffee, simple brew coffee. It's Starbucks now, right? So it's Starbucks, or it's all these fancy coffee chains, American coffee chains that rule, and food has changed tremendously as well. So these sorts of traditional food items that I grew up with eating are no longer part of the mainstay. So if you remember this couple of slides ago, I talked about food fiction has the power to do a couple of things. One was culture, one was emotional connection, and sensory, it draws on your senses. All of that comes through here. What also comes through, it's a very amateur attempt. We had a tutorial on Thursday. The next Thursday, she produced this. It's part of the assignment. I didn't tell them to do a video. I told them, go find out and come back. And because she didn't want to sit and write notes, and she said, when I was trying to write notes, they didn't talk to me. You saw the aunts. One was quieter, one was louder. There was no... So she just took out her phone, and she recorded it, put in some music, and brought it to class. That was it. It was just a couple of hours of work, right? But in this very basic video, She has done a fair amount of things, and I was amazed. I've been teaching for 20 over years at the university. I haven't, the kind of commitment I see when students are engaged in doing things, you know, like food fiction, and they go and do stuff, because when I teach text and all that, they do their readings and they come in, they're very good kids. But to go out of the way to do this, food fiction tends to inspire. And it seems to inspire a lot more when you're given an opportunity to create. And the food fiction creative writing class allowed them to do so. So that's one, I mean, it was a really very heartwarming moment when, you know, the assignment, she came in with that. The following week, the rest of the class came back with videos as well. One had a musical. I don't know how many hours were spent on it. I was really touched because the element of storytelling had gone up a notch. Of course, it went into a multimodal level of storytelling. It's nothing I had taught them. I hadn't taught them to sequence it. It wasn't sequenced, if you notice. I would have done different things with it. I would have taught her to come up with a powerful opening scene, and the closing scene, I would have spoken about that. All that wasn't done. What you see is a basic piece of work, but you also see the heart of the student and the effort and how engaged they were. Now, this was the case for the last few years, right? This year onwards, even more. So I know last year itself, ChatGPT was here, and there was all these blanket rules. You cannot use ChatGPT in the classroom. There is a huge challenge for us now in the creative writing classrooms, and you must share with me whether this happens here as well. The fact that anything that you want to write can be written by AI. You don't need to write it. It's our immediate challenge. And I want to shift away from this and say, and of course, I did a quick search yesterday to see whether it was, whether India was affected by it, and then I read this report that said 44% of undergraduates use ChatGPT for your assignments. I hate to think that we are going to go back to the good old days, when I did my degree. Even in Australia, there were exams. And I hate to think that we would go back to only examining you, that we are able to give you portfolios to work on, assignments, take-home assignments to work on. Am I running out of time? Yeah. Okay. So I would hate to think that, right? So why don't we harness the person the elephant in the room? Hang on, yeah? Sorry, I'm balancing both. Okay. Look at it as an opportunity. Look at it as how do we harness it. I've got a couple of examples afterwards as well, and I'll go through it very quickly. We are concerned about authenticity. We are all concerned about whether it's original. So, but if you do think activities like the ones that I did earlier on, you do see the story take shape initially, right? Because AI can't replace the creative process. What it can do is make your work better, right? So things like prompt generation and all that, those are things that we can work on in the class. How do we use it in the creative writing class? So one example, I've got a couple of examples, is to get it to use, we can use it as a story starter, like a mysterious cookbook that's passed through generations, contains recipes that reveal forgotten food, family secrets, write about the protagonist discovering a recipe that changes their life. Couple of things, right? So these are all prompts, different sorts of prompts that can be generated. And I've been telling my teachers as well that move away from a classroom where you had one prompt for each student, for the whole class. You can now have 15 prompts, 15 prompts of equal weighting. Because what happens is when you ask a teacher to generate like 5-6 prompts, you as a teacher, you have to ensure that they are of all equal difficulty levels, as well as that they match the assessment rubrics adequately for us to be able to say, if I give you an A for this prompt, the A is comparable to an A on another prompt, right? So that's one area where ChatGPT does very well. It creates assessment rubrics really well, very systematically, so much so I've told many of the teachers it's fine. That I think it's something that we can embrace. And just make sure you read through it very carefully, but it is something that we can use. Prompt generation, fabulous. I think ChatGPT has got it. It does very bad text. Right now, I don't think its texts are interesting enough or creative enough. So that's where you have the edge as writers. you can use it to explore unique characters and generate dialogue, realistic dialogue. Dialogue is one of the hardest things to teach, and I've often found people pulling out text that they like Jhumpa Lahiri's, the opening short story that she had, there was between husband and wife, and you know, the one where the marriage is ending, and they have these long, finally they have these long conversations, right? That opening story of her collection, her award-winning collection. It's a long dialogue. What students do is they pick it up and then they start copying, they start modeling the dialogue. Don't do that. That's just, you know, copying and creating something that really is nothing creative about it, right? Of course, it's genre modeling approach, but that's really nothing creative about it. Whereas, if you were to get to ChatGPT to help you create dialogue, and I've seen it happen in the classroom, we've experimented with it, you get ChatGPT to converse with you, it actually creates quite a realistic set of dialogue. You've got to inform it what the main characters are though. You've got to create it. But it works with you with the dialogue generation. I understand now there are apps as well. My students have been showing me apps that serve as your AI boyfriend and AI friend, someone to talk to when you are low. So I do think the counseling department is looking at it very closely. So AI is now able to generate language really effectively, communicate with you really effectively. Okay, I've already gone on to my second example. Okay, this was the second example on dialogue. The third is about, you know, it is able to generate very quickly things that you and I can't, right? Like, for example, reimagining classic recipes. I was wondering, like something like a moonlight appam, a dessert that is baked under the full moon to achieve its ethereal texture, rumored to grant the eater vivid dreams of their future. I looked at that prompt that ChatGPT generated and I thought, I want to write this now, right? I don't want to prep for the keynote address. I want to write this now. So it comes up with all these exciting prompts, you know, that really will engage your students. So why not embrace it for those purposes? Okay, it's certainly, I would argue, I understand there are challenges, and I look forward to having a conversation with you if possible about it. And, you know, but I certainly think we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, right? I certainly think it's good to be able to embrace it and to look at how powerful it can be in our classroom, and even in the creative writing classroom. So it has unlimited idea generation, as I mentioned. I apologize, give me a minute. It is accessible to all learning styles and allows us to do differentiated teaching and learning in a classroom. Is one of the biggest challenges for any country. It is certainly inclusive. It's one of the things, inclusivity is one of the things that we look out for in Singapore now. It's, you know, with the greater use of the different pronouns to address people and students in our classes, it's able to support different learning styles, and it ensures that things are inclusive. It's able to do things that humans are not able to do in a very short span of time, making it a very effective tool in the classroom. It makes it time efficient as well. I do think when our students go out to work, when you guys go out to work, you're going to be using it for lots of things that we were painstakingly taught to write. I think things like report writing, and my girlfriend, who's a journalist, tells me, even reporting news, like not the feature news, even news reports, ChatGPT can generate. You just need to put in where did the accident happen, what happened, and you give it a format. ChatGPT generates. I don't need a journalist to do that. So you are going to go into the world where many of the things that we learned, your professors had to learn the hard way, no longer is needed as a skill. You're going to go out into a world where you need to know how to work with AI, and you need to know how to harness it. How will you do that if you are not equipped to create, and you're only equipped to be able to regurgitate? So there needs to be greater room and emphasis, and so, you know, that's one of the reasons why creative writing would be a good place to start. Okay, I'm going to move on to I'm mindful of time. And it's, of course, it's cross-disciplinary as well. Sorry, can someone help me with the clicker? I am pointing in the right direction. Okay. Well, I think I went too fast. Okay. And with that, I would like to conclude my talk. What I looked at today was, I wanted to introduce you to the idea of the fact that there is a new player in town that is a growing popular subject that is included in many universities, either as a main subject or a minor. And it is one that has many benefits. I wanted to talk about then, if it has many benefits, how do we then embrace it? I talked about what we can do for some practical solutions that I had listed on my slides. I only touched a little on it. I also explained how it would be best to start from what is closest to your heart. And I do very strongly believe food fiction is the place to start it. That's what we have done as a case study in Singapore. And it's done in quite a few places as well. Food fiction is always one of the key elements that is taught in creative writing classrooms, right? And literature classes for that matter. And of course, I'm ending it by acknowledging the fact that we do have a big challenge. We might end up with AI writing all our assignments. So, and that's when, you need to move away from it. And I'm hoping to end with a positive note, to leave you with a positive note that AI can be helpful to us if we use it and harness it. It shouldn't be something we say no AI at all in our classrooms. If we can work together to find ways of using it, because many of the skills, traditional skills, are no longer needed in the 21st century. Yeah? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for your extensive discourse on creative writing and the vital role of food and AI in acquiring knowledge of linguistics and literature. Next, we welcome Dr. S. Shakti Prem Sir, Assistant Professor, to invite the next Chief Guest for the day, Dr. Darshana Samaravira Sir, Deputy Director General, the National Institute of Education, Sri Lanka.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. As we proceed along with the grand scheme of today's occasion, I find it necessary to share what J.K. Rowling deliberates about language, and I quote, "Words are, in my most humble opinion, a most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of both inflicting injury and remedying it. It is only reasonable to suggest that the blessed beauty of the English language is the key impetus for the gathering we have accomplished here today. It is indeed a great honor and privilege to be in the presence of such literary enthusiasts as we see today. I believe that there is no greater honor than to have this opportunity bestowed upon me today to introduce to you one of the most remarkable and prolific language experts of the world to join us today as a part of our grand endeavor. Our guest of the day has joined us for this rather intellectual festivity all the way from Sri Lanka. Dr. Darshana Samaravira is the Deputy Director General of the Faculty of Languages, Humanities and Social Sciences at the National Institute of Education, Sri Lanka. He received his doctoral degree from the prestigious Management and Science University in 2017. He began his illustrious career as a teacher of English language at North Central Provincial Department of Education, Sri Lanka. His journey as a prominent expert in the field of ESL has led him to work at one of the most globally recognized institutions, National Institute of Education, Sri Lanka. Dr. Samavira's knowledge and expertise in this field is almost unparalleled. Many of his speeches on ESL are archived in YouTube and are available for you to witness. This includes topics such as education in South Asia, unearthing the potential, continuing professional development of teachers, ESL in South Asia in the new millennium, 21st century, and ELT materials in Sri Lanka and reconciliation. In his career, Dr. Samaravira has also made a tremendous contribution to the professional development of teachers all over the world. It is also worth mentioning at this point that our guest speaker is also the recipient of a handful of valuable awards, such as the International Visitor Leadership from the Department of State, USA, and Malaysian Technical Cooperation Scholarship from the Government of Malaysia. As I conclude the introduction, I request the gathering to show a big round of applause to welcome Dr. Darshana Samaravira sir to the platform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite Dr. Darshana Samaravira sir, Deputy Director General, to share his ideas on food as a cultural semiotic in literature and arts.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. It's really inspiring. Head of the Department of English, Dr. Verbina, thank you for inviting me to this wonderful occasion, and I want to thank my friend Dr. Mangari as well. We've been friends for ages, for coordinating this. And I particularly wanted to accept this opportunity because of the interesting nature of your theme of the conference, food. As Dr. Anita rightly mentioned, food is associated with the entire life. Right? So I'm not going to delve deeply into literature because I'm not a teacher of literature. I simply enjoy literature. I'm a teacher of English language. However, not only English literature, I've been reading literature from almost all the parts of the country, from Spain or Latin America to China to Japan, and I've read a very nice poem about Teh Tarik, written by a Malaysian poet. So let's go ahead with the presentation. Now, food, we know, is a basic need. It is a basic need. We all depend on food. It is essential. This is what literature, technical literature says, right? When we ask for a definition for food, it says essential in sustaining life, and it nourishes the body. It is linked to our identity, right? These are some of the very prominent things. For me, the main thing about food is food tells us stories. As Anita pointed out, and in her presentation, she presented a case study of Singapore, how food is brought into stories. Yes, food tells us stories, and it signifies identities, and it reflects culture and values. I will start my story here in Coimbatore. Right, this is where, yesterday, immediately after reaching the international airport, Coimbatore International Airport, this is my first visit to Coimbatore, but not my first visit to India. I've been to almost all the parts of India. With Kamal's permission, right? Thank you very much, Kamal, for giving me permission to publish this, right? I had a wonderful evening associated with food, South Indian food, and that was my first encounter with these young people. And there are two others. Right now I don't have the pictures of them. One is here. Thank you very much. These three young people took me, the old man, to a restaurant, a vegetarian restaurant perhaps, and they boasted that this is the best vegetarian restaurant in Coimbatore. I don't know, but food was fantastic, and I learned a lesson there. We had our food on banana leaves, and eating on banana leaves is not a kind of a strange thing for me. Back in Sri Lanka, we do the same, right? We wrap our lunch in banana leaves, and it gives a very nice smell when you open it, and people love to eat such food. And we have this concept of, very posh concept of, they call it lampreis, lamprey and everything, but again it is the same traditional banana leaf lunch, right? Though it is very expensive, and in Colombo they consider it as a very expensive and a kind of a posh thing. But for us, it's been in our lives right throughout. Okay, coming back to the story, at the end, there were these three young people. We had so many stories about food and cultures and everything over dinner. And when I folded my banana leaf, these three people were very happy, right? Because I had done it the right way. They told me that gesture of yours is very pleasing, because we are very happy that you have accepted this, what you ate today, as tasty, delicious. Yes, it was delicious. And I learnt another thing, apart from this folding the banana leaf. I learnt another thing. Why do you have this 65 dish? Right? Paneer 65, chicken 65, mutton 65. Oh, yeah, now it's new to our friend Anita. In India, Anita, there is something called 65, right? Chicken 65, mutton 65, and paneer 65. Yesterday we had paneer 65. That was a starter. That's a starter. Right? I didn't know why, because I ate a 65 long ago. That was in 2010 in Hyderabad. Right? I spent 1 year there at the English and Foreign Languages University, and that's where I had my first encounter with 65. Right? That was chicken 65. One evening, a friend of mine accompanied me to a restaurant, and I enjoyed a chill glass of beer. Yes. Right? That's the way men enjoy food. Oh, right, with chicken 65. That day, I didn't want to ask the question, why you call this 65? But 65 is a pan-Indian thing. After a few years, to my surprise, I started seeing it on the menus in Colombo as well. 65. Nobody knows why it is called 65, but yesterday I learned why it is called 65. Right? In the military, right, there is an order, and it has number 65. Right? It is nothing but fried. Yesterday it was fried paneer. It's tasty, but I learned, and it was a story these young people told me. Right? So that's where I started my fiesta of mind, right, over a very nice vegetarian dinner at Ananda's with this young man. Thank you very much, Kamal, right, for the nice experience. So I have known India as the country of chai, as the country of 65s, and as the country of poha, pav bhaji, yes, many nice things. And if you go to a country, right, as she said, there is something about that country or the state. In India, yes, if you go to Maharashtra, it is pav bhaji. And once in Delhi, I was cheated by somebody. There was a big board, pav bhaji, and I wanted to try. No, you can't match it with pav bhaji from Maharashtra. Right? I told him, hey man, I'm Sri Lankan, but you don't know what pav bhaji is. Go to Maharashtra and try pav bhaji. So this is linked to our identity. Food is linked to our identity. Right? Wherever you go, when I told Anita about chicken rice in Singapore, she was so happy. Right? Go to any place, that place is linked to food. Right? So this is where I started my story, and this is where the actual story begins. Adam and Eve with apple. They're also, at the beginning also, it's been food. Right? Though it is prohibited, it's been food. Right? We all are, according to Christianity. Right? Don't ask me why I did not select Krishna. Right? I wanted to select this because people believe that this is the beginning. Right? The beginning of the story is also linked to food. So there is no end. You can't separate food from us. Continuation of the story. Still food. Right? Food is linked. Now grapes is associated with so many things. Joy, fertility, abundance, patience, festivities, merriment. Right? So different cultures bring different things into the concept of food. Right? And now what is it? Oh goodness. Earlier, grapes with abundance, still abundance, yes. Right? So, grapes is associated with so many things when it comes to arts, literature, right? Food. This is the part of the story that is familiar with us. This is South Indian context. In South India, what I have seen is in all forms of arts, food is a masculine activity, consuming food. Any Tamil movie, you see people consume food, especially farmers, people who work hard. So it is something masculine, right? It's something masculine. And to give energy to the people who run the nation. In the African literature also you find this. In African literature, in Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, you find the king of the food, king of the crops, yam. Yam is a masculine food. It's only the men can cultivate yam. And women cultivate some other kinds of crops. So there is a division. There is a division. This is the culture. This is the culture. In most of these, on most of these occasions, you see only men, right? You see the women serving. That is our culture. But see how the story becomes different when it comes to other cultures. Right? Here in the Asian region, especially in the Indian subcontinent, food is something else, but in the West, food is something else. When we celebrate chai, they celebrate wine. The art of associating or art of matching wine with food is a separate thing. And that is something we, in this part of the world, we don't know. We don't know it. With which food you should associate or match wine, the red and the white. That is something we need to learn, but for them, that is their culture. For them, that is their culture. So it is in the West, food is something associated with class. Food is something associated with upbringing. Food is something associated with your social status. It is so here as well. Food is associated with our social status. Farmers, people who work hard, right? In our culture, they are of the topmost place in our hearts. Here, in the Western culture, the culture is that food is associated with your upbringing, your class and everything. And you see this in most of the literary work that comes from the Europe, especially from France. France is the center of this culture. Therefore, French dining is different. I was telling a story about French dining to my colleagues yesterday. Right? French dining is different. It is associated with their culture. And that's why we see this difference in literature published before, in Russian literature, published before the revolution, published before 1917 and published after 1917. You see these rich dining tables, rich ladies and women celebrating food, and those rich people having relationships, starting relationships over food. But immediately after 1917, the literature produced in the world changed this in Russian literature. It started showing the dark side of the life, especially during the world wars, Second World War. If you are familiar with Chingiz Aitmatov, how food is represented in Chingiz Aitmatov's work, it shows the difficulties associated with the life of people in Soviet Russia during the World War, especially World War II. So that's a change. Right? That's a change. Still, in the European context, this is a French dining table. Right? This is the standard. This is the standard, and it communicates. Right? Like the way you fold the banana leaf communicates something. Right here, there are so many communications associated with that culture. The way you now let me tell another story about a Sri Lankan, a former Prime Minister, who was invited to dinner at Buckingham Palace, hosted by Her Excellency Queen Elizabeth. When everybody, right, or everybody present there, they started their meal using cutlery, and this man, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister, he got a finger bowl, right, washed his fingers and then started, right, eating the way we all do. Everybody started laughing at him. Then at the end, he was to thank Her Excellency. There he started his speech. It's an honor to be here at this grand occasion hosted by Her Excellency. Your Excellency, all these, Your Majesty, sorry, all these people here, the dignitaries, they laughed at me for using the cutlery, my own cutlery, washed by me. But you, all the other people here, you didn't know who washed this cutlery and whether they are properly washed. But I did wash my cutlery and I knew that it was clean. Right? That was the justification. However, do you know why the creator of your constitution, Ambedkar, right? Why he didn't use fingers to eat? Any idea? He's an exception. I have visited Ambedkar Museum in Symbiosis University, Pune, and there I was told he just wanted to use fork and knife to eat to show his anger against the suppression of people in India. Right? That's what I was told. So he didn't wear the traditional dress. He was dressed in the European way and he used fork and knife to eat. Right? So the way people think. Now let me take you to the story that is inhuman. Right? This is how the story has become inhuman. In this world, there are millions of people who say, I'm hungry. Millions of women, children, and men. They are starving even at this moment. There are millions of people starving in Gaza, in Yemen, in the Europe, and even in our part of the world. For them, food is a luxury, a dream that never comes true. A dream that never comes true, right? We have all these deliberations. We talk about food, we talk about festivals, food festivals, right? But there are millions of people, especially children and women, who are starving. For those who have deprived them of their right to have a decent meal, it's a political matter. Those who have created this, even though we have our traditional food, even though we have the culture, we have our culture associated with food, for many people, for millions of people in this world, it is a dream. To have a decent meal is a dream. That is the bitter reality of our time. We have all these organizations. We have the World Food Organization, right? We have so many charities working on this particular issue, which is particularly a political issue, an issue created. So my humble appeal to everybody here, all these young people, is let's celebrate food. Let's talk about food. let's talk about food in literature. And at the meantime, let's be mindful of all these fellow human beings. Let's pray for them, and let's work to make this, we all can get together and work together to make this place a better place for everyone to have a decent meal. I didn't want to talk much about literature, but I wanted to give this lesson, this message. This is the message, right? This is a gentle reminder from somebody who has witnessed this right throughout life. Right? Let's be mindful of this, and every time you eat something, please remember the people who don't have something to eat. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your exposite, innovative perspectives on food as a cultural semiotic feature, an inevitable factor that is emotionally connected. Now, we welcome Dr. K. Nagalakshmi ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to invite the next resource person, Dr. Shweta Antony, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi.
Food is not rational. Food is culture, habit, craving, and identity. Happy noon to one and all present here. It deem it a great privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Shweta Antony ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi. Madam is going to address all of us on the topic, Locavers to Food Studies, an inquiry into the question of tangibility in food studies. Ma'am has completed her BA in All Science College, University of Kerala, MA in Institute of English, University of Kerala, PhD in English in the English and the Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, Telangana. I really feel glad to brief about Madam's remarkable accomplishments in her career. She has embarked her career as a guest lecturer in the Department of English in All Science College, University of Kerala, and worked as a teaching assistant in School of Literary Studies, the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. Currently, she is working as an assistant professor in the Department of English, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi. As a part of her administrative responsibilities, she has acted as a member in various committees and rendered valuable insights to the committees for their upliftment in their manifestos and designing curriculum. Her area of specialization focuses on the studies on Kamala Das, and her thesis entitled with a unique topic, I Speak 3 Languages, Write in 2, Dream in 1, a cosmopolitanism in the poetry of Kamala Das. Her teaching has reached a full circle by imparting and covering almost all the genres for PG and MPhil programs. She is guiding scholars to improve their literary knowledge with her expertise. She has built a profound insights on literature by publishing numerous research papers in refereed and peer-reviewed journals. She has sprinkled her wisdom for contributing chapters in books, editing books, articles, and journals. All these are just a seed for her tree of erudition in the field of literature. Madam's enduring activity continued in academics by organizing conferences. Adding gem to her academia, she has received grants from UGC SAP III for her research projects. To add a feather to her cap, she has been honored with the UGC JRF SRF Fellow Award in July 2010. She has been in association with the professional bodies, also acts as a member in Board of Studies in various reputed institutions and universities. She has acted as a resource person and delivered fruitful lectures. We are fortunate enough to have such an erudite and inspiring resource person and guest speaker amidst us today for our international conference. Dear participants and presenters, empty your cup and be all ears to get your mind filled with Fiesta in exploring food and literature. And indeed, I am elated to welcome Madam Dr. Shweta Antony to address the gathering. I thank one and all for giving me this wonderful opportunity to introduce and welcome Madam Shweta Antony. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I invite Dr. Shweta Anthony to share her ideas on the topic, locovers to food ectodes, an inquiry into the question of tangibility in food studies.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nagalakshmi, for that wonderful introduction. So today I'm going to speak about, as she read out my title, the title might sound, so from locovores to food ectodes, an inquiry into the question of tangibility in critical food studies. So the title might sound a bit intriguing because of the key terms such as locovores, food ectodes, and tangibility. And I plan to approach these aspects by dividing this talk into 4 parts. The first part is titled The Madeleine Effect, where I look at the text that is a classic for food scholars, Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, published in 1913. The second part explores, or I move on to the question of interdisciplinarity and how the turn towards cultural studies in the mid-20th century has significantly affected English studies and how it redefined the idea of text. The Shifting Horizons is engaged with by evoking the concept of cosmopolitanism based on Homi K. Bhabha's work, The Location of Culture. So that would be the third part of my presentation. And the last part engages with understanding food through intermedial approach within the context of, let's say, the COVID-19 pandemic, and after that, how there is a sort of a revival of food through the social media spaces, and how they opened up a lot of new inquiries. So the 2 concepts, locovores and food ectodes, kind of come from that shift. Now, let me begin by looking at the words tangibility. What is tangibility? Something that can be. So in a way, I'm taking forward aspects from Dr. Anita's presentation. So tangibility, materiality, and metaphorics. So these are the 3 terms I'm going to talk about first. So tangibility refers to the ability to be touched or felt, something that is palpable, something that we can connect to, and more significantly, the possibility of treating something as a fact, real or concrete. Something that is comprehensible to the mind and is understood and experienced. So it's talking about sensory perceptions. Now, materiality also has the same implication, but we're looking at a material. We're looking at an ingredient. The quality of being material, having a physical existence, right? And in the context of the Madeleine moment and the Proust effect, so there is a way in which remembrance of things past takes us back to or introduces us to the Madeleine effect and, Madeleine moment, and how it leads on to what is now understood as the Proust effect, which is in a way, ethereal, all right? So what I'm trying to say is that if I'm talking about materiality, there is a way in which the idea of Proust effect as evoked by Madeleine's kind of lean more towards ethereality. So the antonym of materiality also comes into prominence. Now, coming to the metaphorics, all right? Metaphor is a word or a phrase that is used to refer to something other than its literal meaning, invoking an implicit similarity between the thing described and what is denoted by the word or the phrase. So you're familiar with metaphors, right? Similes, all of that. Now, the Madeleine moment. In the work Remembrance of Things Past, published in 1913, when Proust's narrator, Marcel, eats the crumbs of a madeleine dipped in lime blossom tea, it does something to him beyond the fact that he is eating it or it's quenching his hunger. The narrator is described as stuck in the moment, which leads to a sudden awareness as he eats the same thing again and again. So he's having crumbs of madeleine to understand what's happening to him. And after he eats, let's say, 3 bits of it, he finally makes sense of what happens to him or what is happening to him. And he understands that the madeleine crumbs dipped in lime blossom tea becomes a catalyst where he is invited into the process of remembering his past life. He recalls his Aunt Leonie's bedroom, where on Sundays she would soak pieces of madeleines in her lime blossom tea. But beyond this act, there is an ethereality associated with food where the experience of eating transports him figuratively to the house in Coimbatoore. The gardens, the streets, and the town squares come alive. But all he is having are madeleines dipped in lime blossom tea. There is a spatio-temporal shift here, and he tastes the madeleine crumbs, a tangible experience, but it is made potent because of the memory that propped up, and connected to this is the Proust effect. So the madeleine moment leading on to the Proust effect, which is defined by Proust as the ability of memory to be invoked involuntarily when it has been previously blocked. So this was a memory that was blocked for him, but when he was having food, having this particular food, so there is a sort of a alleyway that opened within his memory that took him back to his aunt's bedroom space, and thereby to the village, to the whole town. So madeleine is real, yeah? Interestingly, when you look up the meaning of madeleine in a dictionary now, the first entry is about how it is a French type of small gâteau. Gâteau is sponge cake, often shaped like an elongated scallop shell. And the second entry, which states within parentheses figuratively, is described as something which brings back a memory, a source of nostalgia or evocative memories. So you have to understand that it is through a work of literature that the idea of madeleine itself has, the sort of a material or a tangible meaning to it and a figurative meaning to it. Now, thus when you look at the canonical text, the allusions to food are either minimal or when alluded to, they are used mostly as metaphors. So I'm looking at the canon of literature. All right? So the work that we're looking at is published in 1913, and from 1960s onwards, there is a shift in how we do literature. All right? Now, how many of you are Harry Potter fans? Okay, most of you. So you're familiar with butterbeer, right? Yeah? And do you know about this cafe in Chennai? The old Potion House? How many of you have been there? All right. So they serve butterbeer, right? Yeah? So can you imagine, this is an imaginary food, a fictional food, butterbeer, but it is now being served in cafes. So how do you connect to that? Right? So I'm going to leave you with that question. And now I move on to the key terms, locavore and food anecdotes, the key terms from my title. So locavores can have 2 aspects, the way I approach it. The first is a reference to someone who tries to eat only locally grown foods, and the antonym is interesting, it's distavore. So there is locavore and distavore. But I also am trying to look it through local lores or folklores. You're familiar with that, right? So, which is a collection of traditional knowledge, stories, and beliefs that are specific to a place or a group of people, which is passed down through storytelling. Now, coming to food anecdotes, from the word itself, you understand that it is a reflection on the anecdotes surrounding food. So all of us have anecdotes surrounding food. You can remember some of your experiences. An anecdote, as we know, is a short account of a real incident or person, often humorous or interesting. In other words, an account which is not supported by statistical or scientific analysis. So an anecdote is largely subjective or personal. So it's not fact-based, like when you're looking at tangibility or even the idea of materiality. A previously untold secret, account of an incident. Now, when you look at the etymology of the word, it is traced back to the late 17th century France, or it's a French term, and it was derived from the old Greek word anekdotes, and the first part av means not, all right? As in we have unpublished, that sort of a thing, and ektodos, right? This is a Greek term, means published. So something that is not published, all right? And another meaning that can be traced to this word in Greek would be I give out, all right? So it's not published, but it is something that is out there. Now, how would you categorize your experience with Madeleines and butterbeer? So you have, I don't know how many of you have read Remembrance of Things Past. Is there anyone who has read it? But most of you are familiar with butterbeer, right? So how would you connect to that based on the concepts that I'm looking at? So that's something you can think about or write down. Is it locavore or lore or a food anecdote? Yeah? And specifically because anecdotes are not supported by scientific or statistical analysis, it's largely looking at a personalized intervention into an event in your life, right? Now, let's move on to the second part of the talk. And here, I draw inspiration from the title of the conference, Fiesta of the Mind, which implies an intellectual and academic engagement, which also reminds us of the phrase, food for thought. So now you must be focusing on food because it's about lunchtime, and it's not probably giving you any thoughts at the moment, but bear with me for some more time. So food for thought, all right? And now looking at the second part of the title, exploring food and English literature in interdisciplinary horizons led me on to three terms associated with the understanding of the discipline of humanities. The first being liberal arts. Have you come across that term? Yeah, so it's largely a term that is traced back to the medieval times, where universities were slowly propping up, all right? So liberal arts is the academic course of instruction intended to provide general knowledge and usually comprising the arts, humanities, natural sciences, and social sciences, as opposed to professional or technical subjects. So this divide also came up in the earlier presentations. It is often referred through the words trivium. So this is Latin again, trivium and quadrivium, all right? So trivium is a Latin word used to refer to the lower division of the liberal arts. That is grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So it was the lower division, so language as such, in medieval universities. And quadrivium, again, used within education, was used to refer to the higher division of the 7 liberal arts in the Middle Ages, composed of geography, astronomy, arithmetic, and music. So there are other elements also. Now, you must be familiar with the term cultural studies. Yep? Yes? No? Yeah? You are familiar with Roland Barthes, Stuart Hall? Yeah? All right. So now cultural studies is a term that is quite popular within the English department, and it was first popularized by Stuart Hall. It is known as the Birmingham School. It actually took root at the English department in University of Birmingham, UK. And then there is the Frankfurt School as well. And it has been used in literature departments to examine how literature is shaped by and reflects the culture in which it is created and consumed. So it's both a creation and there is also a consumption of literature. So I want you to think about the idea of when you're reading about butterbeer, Are you really reading it, or are you really consuming a particular space or a particular culture that J.K. Rowling is creating, right? So that's what cultural studies does within English literature departments. Consumption. So the idea of eating and the idea of consumption are totally different, all right? Thus, we borrow so because of cultural studies, we borrow methodological interventions from fields such as history, sociology, politics, philosophy, economics, medical sciences, psychiatry, etc. So now we have an emerging field called medical humanities, and we have something called autopathographies, where you look at nutrition, we look at disorders such as anorexia, etc., where food becomes a important aspect. And we have cancer narratives, where nutrition becomes an important aspect, all right? So beyond the idea of basic sustenance, the idea of food itself is taking on newer dimensions. Now, at the turn of the 21st century, there began debates about doing research within English departments. Usually we used to do biographical criticism. That was the lens through which we would analyze text. Now things have changed. It's not literary text that we analyze, but also films, comics, we do a lot of interdisciplinary work. Now, this sort of a questioning of what is research within English department was done somewhere around 2000, the early 2000, the first decade of 2000, and this is captured in this book called Research Methods for English Studies. So those of you who are serious about pursuing research in English should have this as your Bible sort of a thing. So Research Methods for English Studies, edited by Gabriel Griffin. Now in this volume, there is an essay by Catherine Belsey titled Textual Analysis as a Research Method. Right? Catherine Belsey, a textual analysis is a research method in which she foreground the opening up of the idea of text that was brought in with structuralism. So you're familiar with structuralism? Yeah? So one of the prominent theorists there is Roland Barthes. And what are the names of the essays? Or what is the main idea that he brings to the fore? About text. About the idea that an author is dead, and the text is autonomous, and it is the reader who brings meaning to it. So what structuralism, or what Roland Barthes' essay, Death of the Author, and other works of his introduced was the prominence given to the reader. All right? So there is a way in which the reader becomes a historic. Reader can time travel, all right? But what you find as the major shift in literary studies is the idea of looking at context rather than text. So you will understand Jigarthanda. Do you understand what Jigarthanda is? Yeah? Because from a particular culture. Whereas when you're looking at butter beer, are you able to understand? So you have to look it up in a alternative universe, sort of. So we are not looking at text per se, we are looking at context, right? A reader has to understand the context to understand it. But earlier what used to be the thing? You would look at the life of the author. You would look at the life of the author and understand the text, which we call as biographical criticism, which doesn't work anymore, right? Now, the aspect that is common to all, liberal arts, cultural studies, and the research methods, this particular intervention into English studies, is the question of interdisciplinarity. And you are familiar with something called N.G.P, right? National Education Policy of 2020, which talks about something similar to liberal arts, where you can opt for skill-based courses. Even if you are in the Department of English, you can explore other sciences as well, all right? So there is a way in which these three aspects become pertinent at the moment, all right? Now, when you are looking at the question of interdisciplinarity in terms of redefining English studies, and specifically while orienting food studies concepts, food studies, concepts have to be borrowed from areas as far-reaching as ethnography. So if you're familiar with Claude Lévi-Strauss's culinary triangle, the raw and the cooked, he's largely bringing it from an ethnographic angle, all right? Then there is sociology, philosophy, and even medical sciences, among others. And as Dr. Darshana was talking about, the question of class becomes important. So there are critics like Pierre Bourdieu, Mary Douglas, who have worked on the class question, all right? Now, let's explore all of these ideas, especially the opening up of the idea of text by looking at a text, the Galaxy Dosha. So we are going to look at a text which is titled the Galaxy Dosha. You'll have to read the text. Is it visible? Is it visible? Yeah, it's a bit tricky to read, right? So what do you see here? Is this a text that can be studied in English departments? So perhaps you can circulate it in your group so that everyone can read it later on. All right. So now I'm going to discuss this. As a genre, this is categorized as concrete poetry. Yeah. Then it evokes elements of visuality and textuality, yeah, because we are reminded of how you cook a dosha, all right, how you pour the batter. So it reminds you of a ghee dosha, right, ghee roast, yeah, thin, wafer thin, yeah. So visuality and textuality, metaphorical and the material, because there are certain meta-narrative tendencies that you see here. What is meta-narrative? A text that talks about the origin of the text, right? So here, the author is declaring himself to be the god, yeah? While he is creating a dosha, he's talking about the Milky Way because the white batter reminds him of the Milky Way. So he's like God, I'm creating the Milky Way, right? And there is a way in which creativity, literature, literariness, etc. is evoked here. But at the same time, the materiality of it, the fact that when you're reading this poem, you're reminded of dosha, all right? And the intricate process, he's describing the intricate process of making a dosha. So you must have experienced it. So if you would not have made it, you would at least have eaten it, right? And which would give you the same shape, right? Now, there is a materiality that is evoked here, but what about the ethereal elements? There are also ethereal elements because it's highly philosophical. It is engaging with the idea of creation. It's engaging with the idea of existence and the philosophical inquiries, And do you see Madhu Raghu, the name of the author, bang in the middle, right? So what you understand is a sort of an engagement with creating something and the existence of something, all right? Now, you can actually, you can share it, Vishnu can share it, and you guys can take a look at it, yeah? The part 3 of my presentation takes to a lot of aspects covered by my fellow panelists, specifically Dr. Anita, and it takes us now to the question of international engagement with Indian food. I evoke the realities of a post-liberalized, globalized, and cosmopolitan world, which is familiar to us literary scholars as through post-colonial studies. Yeah? Theories and literature of the diaspora are very popular in today's conference because when I was looking at the book of abstracts, most of you are looking at diasporic writers, right? And in fact, the discipline of food studies in India Indian academic space owes its beginning to narratives emerging from colonial modernity. So we're looking at the later part of the 19th century, the beginning of 20th century during British colonial rule. Partition studies, you know about the two partitions of India and how food also traveled. And more significantly, literatures of the Indian diaspora. And I'm sure Dr. Ananda would have a lot to talk about that. For the discussion, I'm referring to two prominent diasporic writers, Jhumpa Lahiri. You're familiar with her? And Dr. Ananda referred to her. Familiar with her? How many of you have read any of her works? All right. Have you watched the movie Namesake by any chance? All right. Okay. So I'm referring to Jhumpa Lahiri and Imtiaz Darkar. Have you heard about Imtiaz Darkar? All right. So let's begin with Jhumpa Lahiri. She's a British-American author, has given Indian food a global standing through her works, through all of her works. But as far as food studies is concerned, her short story collection, Interpreter of Maladies, you referred to that, and The Namesake are important. And from the Interpreter of Maladies, I'm looking at a specific story called Mrs. Sen. And Namesake, both these works are important in placing Bengali food worldwide. And in Mrs. Sen's, it's evident in the way in which there is an elaborate description of the ritual of preparing a fish curry, which was really important for the Bengali culture. All right? To buying the fish, to eating it. So there is an elaborate description. And she is actually babysitting Mrs. Eliot's son, all right? So there is a way in which this American boy is witnessing this intrinsic ritual that is alien for him and is fascinated by him. And to a great extent, he's attracted to Mrs. Sen's food rather than his mother's cooking. So there is a way in which the American food culture is compared with the Bengali food culture. But the problem here is that the Bengali food culture through Jhumpa Lahiri's work gets promoted as the Indian culture, which is not the case. We are a vibrant community, and each state and every 100 kilometers within any state you would have variations, as you were talking about pav bhaji. Yeah? So Jhumpa Lahiri, and in The Namesake, we find Jhumpa Lahiri problematizing the interactions between our roots and routes, all right? Specifically, when you're looking at the characters in the narrative, there is a first generation couple, Ashima and Ashok, and the second generation is represented through the character Gogol, their elder child. And we are introduced to the preparation of jalmudi available with the ingredients available in America. But she's not able to make the jalmudi that she would have in Kolkata, all right? And further, there are references to the ritualistic use of foods as represented through the ceremony Anna Prasadam, right? The child grows and becomes 6 months, yeah? And Ashima, who in the beginning of the narrative is craving for jalmudi, we find her cooking full-fledged Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner by the end of the novel, which are intrinsic to the American culture. So The Namesake has been adapted into a film by Meera Nair in 2006, which explicitly captures the dynamics. And what I need you to look up is an essay in the journal Food and Wine, written by Jhumpa Lahiri, which is rather interesting. Indian Takeout, bringing the flavors of Calcutta to Rhode Island in a suitcase. And she gives a one-line description below that. And she says, how a family of pirates, you know who pirates are? So pirates are found in the ocean and they are known to steal stuff. All right, so she is referring to how her forefathers or the earlier ancestors crossed the sea but carried with them a suitcase full of spices. And you would find a similar trope in Mistress of Spices as well. I hope you are familiar with that text. Chitra Divakaruni Banerjee's. Yeah. Now, how a family of pirates from Rhode Island brought home all the flavors of Calcutta in a single suitcase. All right, now we come to Imtiaz Darkar, where we are looking at poetry. All right, so Imtiaz Darkar is a Pakistani-born British poet. All right, so from India we go on to Pakistan. And in her collection of poem, I Speak for the Devil, which was published in 2001, she has a poem called Crab Apples. So we find crab apples in India also, the small apples. And I'm reading out the poem. My mother picked crab apples off the Glasgow apple trees. You know where Glasgow is? Yeah, Scotland. So my mother picked crab apples off the Glasgow apple trees and pounded them with chilies. That's how we eat fruit in India. Pineapple, with chilies to change her homesickness into green chutney. All right? My mother picked crab apples of the Glasgow apple trees and pounded them with chilies to change her homesickness into green chutney. All right, and the next poem is titled Recipes Never Written Down. And this is from her another collection, Leaving Footprints, published in 2009. And I'll just read the first stanza of the poem. It's a long poem, but you'll get the gist of it. So this is Recipe Never Written Down, Leaving Footprints, from the collection Leaving Footprints, 2009. My mother never taught me this recipe. So this is something you would understand, because it's very difficult for you to convince your mother to tell you the secret of a particular recipe, because even if we try cooking it, it will not be as perfect as your mother's recipe, right? So my mother never taught me this recipe. She was a northern woman and would not cook with coconut. Yeah, so now there are other cultural implications coming in. And would not cook with coconut, it's mine, I never wrote it down. All right? And the poem goes on about how the coconut has to be cut and how it is very difficult to, take the coconut milk out of it. Perhaps that's the reason why North Indians don't use coconut that much. I don't know, but she seems to be implying that. And I noticed that they don't use ready-made, as in fresh coconut milk. They would buy the Maggi version, right? Yeah, available on stores, right? So my mother never taught me this recipe. She was a northern woman and would not cook with coconut. It's mine, I never wrote it down, all right? So now I want you to think about what's happening in these texts, right? There are elements from the home culture, the host and the host culture. So if you're familiar with the diasporic theory, you know that home and away, right? Roots and routes. Now, at this juncture, I'm going to talk about cosmopolitanism. I won't go into a detailed discussion as such. In the context, we are looking at questions such as, in an increasingly cosmopolitan world, what is a cosmopolitan world? It's a world where, every culture is intermingling. We do not any longer know what is the original or the authentic culture. For instance, where did biryani come from? What is the special biryani available in Coimbatore? There is no particular biryani, but when you just cross the border to Palakkad, we have something called a Rautar biryani. Yeah? Then there is Kadapa Katti biryani. So what's happening? Biryani itself, sorry I messed that up, but you understand. Dindugal biryani, yeah? All right, and we have Talasheri biryani, like the list goes on, right? Lucknowi biryani. So biryani itself is to some extent cosmopolitan, all right? So in an increasingly cosmopolitan world, food has become an icon that has moved beyond the conventional understanding of being just one of the necessities of life. So Dr. Darshana was talking about that, we have to be aware of people who don't have food because it's one of the 3 necessities of life. But today, when you're looking at food, it has moved beyond that. The word consumption has taken on multifarious meanings and significations. And taking off from these questions, I'm going to talk about cosmopolitanism as envisaged by Homi K. Bhabha in his work, The Location of Culture. So there are a lot of scholars who have talked about cosmopolitanism, but I'm just referring to Bhabha's work. This is Location of Culture, published in 1994. In this work, he talks about two kinds of cosmopolitanism: vernacular cosmopolitanism and global cosmopolitanism. So vernacular cosmopolitanism is the example that I just gave you. You can look at it that way. Global cosmopolitanism was widely influential when he was writing that work. So we are looking at 1994. That configures the planet as a concentric world of national societies extending to global villages. So you're familiar with all of that. I'll read it again. Configures the planet, all right? So it's no longer called global, because there is a reconfiguration when you're looking at terms such as global or, what was the other term that came up? Globalization and post-liberal consumerism, all of that, all right? So now he's saying that we cannot use the word global, you have to use the word cosmopolitanism, because we are looking at not the global picture, but at the reinvention of planet as a whole. So we are not looking at the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, we are engaging with the idea called the global north and the global south, which has to do with the categorization of countries into developing, underdeveloped and developed countries. So India would come under the global south because it's in the category of developing countries. So economics becomes the basis for the division, all right? So it's a cosmopolitanism of relative prosperity and privilege, founded on ideas of progress that are complicit with neoliberal forms of governance and free market forces of competition, right? Consumerism. And vernacular cosmopolitanism, on the other hand, engages with the kind of, transformation or transaction that I talked about, right? Because you find now, and this is a tendency that happens in the turn of the 21st century, that we have internal migration, right? And if you know Bill Ashcroft, he has an essay called Transnation, which talks about this. Now, let's come back to the vernacular question. And in the case of India, it's not the class question, but the caste question that comes up. And for that, I want you to look up Hansada Sovendra Shekhar. Have you come across this author? He's Jharkhand. He's from Jharkhand. And he has this work called They Eat Meat. And there are three short stories from there: Desire, Divination, and Death, They Eat Meat, which refers to internal migration. So a couple from Jharkhand moves to Gujarat. And you know that in Gujarat, non-veg is banned. But they are constantly surveilled by their neighbors to see whether they are eating meat, all right? And they even had to smuggle eggs into their home, all right? So that is why, they eat meat. There is a reference to they, meaning that there is this implicit idea that us and they, we are different, right? So it talks about internal migration. And November is the month of migration, in which you will find a lower caste woman trying to buy jalebi for her children by selling her body. So the gender question also comes into play, the caste question and the gender question, which becomes very important in the Indian context. Now, something that might be of interest to all of you, because it might evoke food items that you are familiar with. Columbu, yeah, Jigar Tanda. Yeah, so there is this work by Anita Nair called Alphabet Soup for Lovers. Have you heard about it? So it's actually written in a very peculiar style, like a dictionary. A for, I don't remember what A for was. B for like that. And J for is Jigar Tanda. And K for is Kulambu, right? Yeah. So it's very interesting, and it connects Tamil cuisine. It kind of looks at Tamil cuisine and the ingredients that is pertinent to, the Tamil cuisine in a way, all right? So I've talked about a lot of things, and I am going to show you one Instagram video, and you have to tell me, or you have to think about it a bit, and tell me whether you can categorize it as locavores or localores or food anecdotes. And I want you to think about such food items found in Coimbatore and give me examples so that I can try them. So this is basically, like post-COVID, we have a lot of food bloggers, yeah, and they look at specialities from each region. So this is something called, it's not playing. Yeah. You're going to be really angry with me for showing you this. Cheese and chocolate. Okay, so this is a specialty found in Ahmedabad. All right, I think this will make you want to visit Ahmedabad and try it out, except for the cheese and chocolate part, I guess. Now you have to tell me such outlets or such special foods that's there in Coimbatore that I can try out. All right. And before, I've concluded my session, but I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Hazel Verbena for this opportunity and for the LTI chapter of Coimbatore and the entire management for organizing this event, because this is an upcoming area of critical studies. And I'm grateful to you guys for listening to me, bearing with me. And it's an honor to have interacted with the speakers, the plenary speakers, the keynote speakers, and also with research scholars who came and talked to me. And I hope to interact with you more over the breaks or over the day. And thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your intensive deliberation on Mandolin concept. Indeed, we are enriched with your novelistic information on food and its interconnections with literature.
Dear participants, we request you to come back here, assemble here by sharp 1:30. So, I repeat again, let us break for lunch. We request all the paper presenters to assemble here by
Now, we welcome Mrs. B. Jayashree Devi, ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to invite the next speaker for the day, Dr. J. Mangari, ma'am, author and academic head, PG and Research, Department of English, Ethiraj College for Women, Chennai.
Food is not just fuel, it is information. It talks to your DNA and tells it what to do. Dr. Mark Hyman. With immense pleasure and pride, I introduce the distinguished chief guest of this post-lunch session, Dr. J. Mangarkarasi ma'am, an author and the academic head of PG Research Department of English at Ethiraj College for Women, Chennai. She is also the national chapter convener of LTI and a luminary in the field of English language and literature, who has dedicated over 2 decades to the pursuit of excellence in education, research, and community development. Her impressive academic foundation includes a bachelor's, master's, and MPhil in English from University of Madras and a PhD from Loyola College. Reflecting her commitment to mentoring the next generation, she has successfully guided 7 doctoral candidates and is currently supervising 6 scholars. Her areas of academic interest include curriculum design, integration of technology in education, and the application of artificial intelligence in the humanities. Education is not just the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire, says W.B. Yeats. That defines her approach to teaching and innovation. Beyond academia, she has made remarkable contributions as the national convener of LTI chapters, an associate of IATEFL and TESOL, and a board member of the Chennai Literary Association. Through these roles, she has been instrumental in promoting language, education, and literary engagement on a global scale. Notably, her impactful role as course material producer for TNOU Chennai and her active involvement in virtual learning projects since 2016 demonstrates her visionary approach to education. She regards these initiatives as avenues to bridge gaps and build futures in education. She is an author of several books, including ESL Assessment in Tamil Nadu, Methods and Practices, Essentials of Language, a course of workbook for Language Lab, Basic Grammar, Quick Find series. Her recent publication includes Zooming into Digital Education, which reflects her innovative approach to digital pedagogy and reaffirms her belief that technology and education must evolve hand in hand to empower learners in a digital world. Her excellence has recognized with various prestigious awards. To list it out, she has got the Best Education Award in 2018, the Mayan Award of Superlative Efforts in Education in 2018, the recognition among the top 50 women educators across India in 2019, inclusion in the top 50 thought leaders in higher education in 2020, a citation from the World Book of Records, London in 2021, Inspiring Women of the Year Award in 2024, and also Visionary Women Award nominee in the year 2025. Her contributions are global in scale. She has represented India at IATEFL annual conferences, Birmingham and Scotland. She has delivered keynote address at Sri Lanka in 2018. She has also organized international conferences in UAE and Nepal, showcasing her leadership and global vision. Moreover, her humanitarian initiatives such as India Turns Pink and Women's Empowerment Project, Valimai Tamarachi, highlight her commitment to social change. In addition to her accolades, she holds a patent Voices Reimagined, AI-powered augmented reality for speech intervention, exemplifying her innovation at the intersection of technology and education. Ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together in extending a warm, enthusiastic welcome to such a paramount personality, a trailblazer, a mentor, a visionary leader, Dr. J. Mangarkarasi ma'am. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Education is the key to unlock the golden door to opportunity. Now, I invite Dr. J. Mangarkarasi ma'am, author and academic head, PG and Research, Department of English, Ethiraj College for Women, Chennai, to share her ideas on the topic food as a symbol and spectacle in Shakespearean drama.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. respected head of the department, faculty members of the department, and my dear friends, speakers from Sri Lanka, Singapore, and Delhi. Warm evening greetings to all of you. As it's post-lunch, certainly all of us will have some effect, a jiggling effect within us. Within that, I'm just getting into a different perspective. All our speakers, all my friends, they just focused on how food is related, the post-colonial view, and how it can be connected to integrate with cultural changes and with culture, and how it could be related to our emotion, memory, and all those stuff. On the other hand, I just wanted to focus your attention towards Shakespeare's time, how as an author, as a dramatist, he used language, food, into his work of art. Let's move into the world of Shakespeare. Food as a symbol and spectacle in Shakespearean drama. All of us are familiar with Shakespeare. Who was Shakespeare? All of us regarded as one of the greatest playwrights, and all of us remember him for his sonnets. And he was born in 1564 at Stratford-upon-Avon, England. Over his lifetime, all of us are familiar. He wrote 39 plays and 154 sonnets. And notable works, all of us are familiar, Hamlet and all these things, and comedies, histories, and other things. How did Shakespeare use food? Have you ever, could you recollect how Shakespeare used food as a theoretical tool in his plays or in his work of art? Food as a recurring motive in Shakespeare's work, we are going to focus on that, how it could reflect social, cultural, and symbolic meanings in early modern England, how it was, and all of them focused on how it is and how it will be. And now we just shifted to how it was, and how Shakespeare used all these things to explore themes of power, class, morality, and human desires. And food is connected with all these emotions. He just used that as a powerful theatrical tool for spectacle and audience engagement.
One of the recurring elements in William Shakespeare's plays is food. You probably know the famous line from Twelfth Night, "If music be the food of love, play on." It begins the play. But Shakespeare goes beyond that, frequently using food as a metaphor for his world and his characters. Much of what he alludes to still lives with us today. For example, you must have used this phrase before, "eaten me out of house and home." You'd say this about someone who ate all the food out of your kitchen. Now here's the full line. It's from Henry IV, Part 2, one of Shakespeare's history plays, which recently aired on WKNO as part of the Hollow Crown series. "He hath eaten me out of house and home, he hath put all my substance into that fat belly of his." Well, Mistress Quickly says this about Shakespeare's famously fat knight, Sir John Falstaff, who hasn't paid his hotel bill in weeks. Now, here in the Mid-South, we have lots of ways to keep your home's pantry stocked with fresh foods. There are several farmers markets in the area, some of which are open year-round. In Shakespeare's age, these outdoor markets with locally grown food would have been the primary way to stock your own.
Okay, now we listen to him, how it was. And all of you are familiar with St. George's Inn. When I visited England, I just visited that place, St. George's Inn. It was really wonderful being there, and how these coffee houses and all these places help them to network with friends. Even now we have cafe houses, and then all these places, it helps us to network with our friends, and we can sit for a long time, chat with our friends, and we exchange ideas like that. On those days, they used those coffee houses to exchange knowledge, to exchange ideas. And food culture in Shakespeare's birthplace, Stratford-upon-Avon, it refers to food in everyday life in their routine, and it was just reflected in on all his plays. And the influence of societal norms and values on food symbolism. What do you mean by food symbolism? Food as a symbol. How could we make use of food as a symbol? We can make use of food as a symbol, and it helps us to get wealth and power and lavish feasts. That was explained in Macbeth and Hamlet. Hunger, already our friend made a mention. When we talk about food, we have to think of hunger too. Hunger and deprivation, and how it led to class struggles in King Lear. That was described by him. Temptation and excess and overindulgence as moral decline. That was beautifully presented by Shakespeare in The Tempest. Fertility and life, the fruit and abundance as symbols of growth. A fruit, it was just used early in Paradise Lost itself by Milton, but a fruit, it was used by Shakespeare too as a symbol of growth, as a symbol of fertility, and as a symbol of life. Themes highlighted through food in Shakespeare's plays are mortality, poison and death, that was just introduced in Romeo and Juliet, gluttony, that is Falstaff in Henry IV. And food can be used in social hierarchy too. Feast, it highlights social status and power. Commoners and lower classes, they're shown through hunger or simple meals in Henry IV. So in all these places, when you carefully look into it, the portrayal of the characters, the incidents, and how Shakespeare introduced that, it was through the food as a symbol. Excessive banquets often critique greed and corruption. That was reflected in Shakespeare's plays. Food and the body. And he just explained that, framed that in his work of art. In early modern dietaries, manuals and texts guiding diet and health, these are Galenic principles. These are known as Galenic principles. These are early modern dietaries. Connection between food and physical and mental well-being. All these are interconnected. Food, our physical activities, and then well-being. Even now, when we were talking, even last night, we consume some food which is really good for digestion. It has connection with our mood, and then it has connection with our mental well-being too. So we say if it is really good for digestion. And when we interacted too, we found all individuals, they have their own style of consuming food for their well-being, total well-being, physical and mental well-being. This was introduced in early modern period itself, and that has been classified as early modern dietaries. And Galenic revival, theory of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and all these comes under this Galenic revival. Foods classified as hot, cold. Sometimes we consume coffee and tea as hot. Others, they keep it aside for some time and they prefer to consume as a cold one. Cold coffee too is famous now. Cold, moist, or dry. It affects our temperament. It is more connect with our memory, and it is more related to our memory studies too. So in that way, we can classify the personality of an individual. So that would really help us to understand a personality. Food plays a major role to define our personality. So that can be noted down from the use of food as a symbol. Food properties and digestion. So all food properties, it leads to digestion. It takes some time. Even now, when you look at the table, When you consume water, it goes inside, it will take some time for that 5 minutes. If it is meat and all heavy food, it takes nearly 40 minutes, sometimes 1 hour. If it is cereals, it takes some time, half an hour, more than half an hour. So beliefs about digestion reflecting harmony and balance of our life. Overrating or inappropriate food linked to moral and physical disorder. So it has a link in our personality. Sometimes it just leads to moral conduct, and then even physical disorder. It will happen when you consume a different food. So you have to note down your food. You have to be really careful while consuming food. Even the break we have, everything is really important. Staple foods, crops, and the agricultural revolution. Agricultural revolution took place at that point of time. Staple foods of the era, that is common diets like bread, ale, porridge, cheese, and meat. Even now, when you visit England, you'll find different types of breads, really aromatic breads we have. The food itself changes, and it fine-tunes our personality. We consume different food, rice, dal, and curry, and all those. It gives a different personality type. So differences in food availability across social classes too leads to the choice. The agricultural revolution, it just led for innovations in farming practices itself, and then increased food production and its social implications, how it led to all these changes, revolution. So colonial conquests and discoveries, reception of new world foods. Now, when for this generation, Z and Z, when we ask them, they come up with a lot of food items. Earlier, when we come to Coimbatore, Coimbatore is really famous for food, Annapurna and all this. And now we have so many outlets, and we have food carnival. When I visited Coimbatore, I just visited the food carnival too, food carnival and everything. And all those places, they are aware of food. All people of India, not even people of India, others, they look at food in a different way. They get into that carnival, and then they would like to explore different types of food. So the transformation takes place. Earlier, due to hunger, they just had the basic food. They focused only on food, shelter, and all these are basic needs earlier. Now it's luxury, and we all are connoisseurs of food, I shall say. So we would like to taste different types of food. So these kind of food, it was introduced at that point of time itself. So how the reception for a new world food. A new world food, we can consider that as a junk food too. Potatoes, tomatoes, and cacao. Cultural resistance and adaptation in early modern England, that led for a new world food. And then the spice trade, that also brought in something, all the spices into our regular platter. That is pepper, nutmeg, and cinnamon. And now cinnamon tea is really famous to control our fat and other things. So cinnamon as a symbol of wealth. So when you use all these spices, we consider you as you belong to a rich legacy and all. So it reflects the themes of luxury, power, exoticism in Shakespeare's plays. So when you use all these spices, now let's have a view.
There's a great metaphor with honey in Henry IV, Part 2. Henry says, "See, sons, what things you are, how quickly nature falls into revolt when gold becomes her object. For this the foolish, over-careful fathers have broke their sleep with thoughts, their brains with care, their bones with industry. For this they have engrossed and piled up the cankered heaps of strange achieved gold. For this they have been thoughtful to invest their sons with arts and martial exercises, when like the bee, culling from every flower the virtuous sweets, our thighs packed with wax, our mouths with honey, we bring it to the hive, and like the bees, are murdered for our pains. Vegetables and fruits often find their way into Shakespeare's writings as metaphors. For instance, corn from Richard II. He says, "Thou weep'st, my tender-hearted cousin, we'll make foul weather with despised tears our sighs, and they shall lodge the summer corn and make a dearth in this revolting."
Thank you. So now in Chai Kings and all, we taste different tea. Earlier we all are familiar with milk tea alone. Now they have different tea, hibiscus and with so many varieties, tulsi tea and all those tea. So when you add it with honey, now without sugar we can have it with honey too. So that was brought in by him. Banquets in all his comedies, that is a reference to Twelfth Night, The Tempest, and it just reflects love and harmony. And festive settings emphasized joy and reconciliation that was described in Twelfth Night. Banquets in history plays, example Henry VIII and Richard II. And there he just described feasting as a display of wealth and authority. In tragedies, Macbeth and Hamlet, poison used as a food. Here, poison food and drink as a tool of treachery, how they treat each other. Food in relationships and conflict, food as a site of tension. It was displayed in Taming of the Shrew, Kate and the other characters' wedding feast, and poison and food, that is Hamlet and Macbeth, and love and camaraderie, Merry Wives of Windsor. Food excess, that is obesity in Shakespeare. Obesity, it was explained him in his plays, Falstaff, Henry IV, as an embodiment of indulgence and corruption, and comic characters, Mr. Quickly, and obesity used for for humor and satire. The gluttonous clowns and all, Shakespeare's critique of overindulgence in his comic characters, and even in The Tempest, there are so many characters described how they carry the logs and how they used to use food in them. Hunger excess, cannibalism. Cannibalism, that's noted in Shakespeare's plays. So cannibalistic imagery used by Shakespeare first time, and it represents extremes of human behavior, moral decay and savagery, and when they consume a different type of food. Caliban in Tempest, fear of other tied to colonialism and savagery. Othello, jealousy depicted as emotional and physical consumption. Lady Macbeth and Beatrice, hunger for power and how it led for their destruction. And Hamlet, mortality and the metaphors of being consumed by death, how it led to his death. Spectacle on stage, food as a visual and dramatic tool in performances that really attracted the attention span of the viewers. Lavish banquets creating opulence and grandeur. These are the key examples used by Shakespeare. Banquo's ghost at the feast in Macbeth, Cleopatra's luxurious feast in Antony and Cleopatra, the poison chalice in Hamlet. So the final ending, we just end with supper used by Shakespeare, the evolution of English banquets.
My name is Ivan Day. I'm from England and I'm a food historian. And I specialised for many years in looking at the food culture of the Tudors, the food from the time of William Shakespeare. And what I've tried to do in this wonderful Tudor room with this extraordinary carved oak overmantel, wonderful stonework in the fireplace and panelling, is to create a dinner table which Shakespeare would have actually recognised if he walked into the room. It might look a bit strange to a modern diner, but What I've done here is forgotten about all of the cliche foods that we think about when we think about the Tudors. We think about them gnawing on birds' legs and swan pies and peacocks. They did have things like that, but they've all gone. They've all been consumed and taken away. And at the end of the feast, which was the name they gave for all the savoury foods in the meal, I've constructed the after course, which was, funnily enough, called the banquet. Nowadays, we think of a banquet as being a big, formal occasion with lots of people lined up on tables with wonderful spreads. But at this time, it had a completely different meaning. It was actually the sweet foods, what they called the sweet meats, or the banqueting stuff, which were consumed after all of the heavy, really robust foods had already been consumed. It was the equivalent of a modern custom, which was, at the end of the meal, you might give your guests a glass of liqueur and a chocolate or a mint. This is a Tudor after-dinner mint, the equivalent of, and it's much more sumptuous than a modern after-dinner sweetie, because we have here food that is actually performing as a piece of table theatre. It's food as art. During the 16th century, sugar became a little bit cheaper and more abundant, and all sorts of new sugary foods were created. They were collectively known in England as banqueting stuff. This was sweet food that you had after the meal for this very special course. But of course, it was something that you only got in very high status families, royal palaces, the houses of dukes and earls and the landed aristocracy. This wasn't something that you would get in an ordinary household, because this is the culinary equivalent of a Maserati or a Lamborghini. This is a very high status display. You're showing off your wealth by giving your guests the most expensive luxury foods. The people who made these were among the most skillful of all of the servants who worked in the food production in great houses. So what you see here isn't just something I've made up. Every single one of them is based on some evidence that is either from the recipe books, from contemporary paintings, from illustrations in some of the souvenir books of big feasts. But it's all based very much on what actually happened. It does have a narrative which is about a Renaissance cultural phenomenon that most of us know nothing about at all. It's vanished into the mists of time because it's food. Food is a very ephemeral thing. We eat it, it's gone. And then 10 years later, the fashions in dining have moved on and we've forgotten about what we used to do. But there's quite a lot of evidence from the period of Shakespeare of really sumptuous banquets. What I've tried to do here is to recreate that ambience, really, of a Tudor banquet for the modern museum visitor. And I hope when they come in, they will see something which is unlike anything they've ever seen before.
So it's just a reflection of Elizabethan food. With that, we'll end the session. And I profusely thank the management, faculty members of the Department of English for this wonderful organization of this conference, Fiesta of Food, and the array of speakers from different parts of the world to bring in a very big, rich platter to all your students. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your intense insights on food. You artistically expressed the techniques of the legendary dramatist Shakespeare and his various depiction of food in his remarkable plays. I once again thank you, ma'am. Kind attention, all participants. We'll begin our valediction shortly. I request all the participants to maintain silence. The valedictory function is about to begin shortly. I request the gathering to maintain silence. The valedictory will begin shortly. I gladly welcome our most dignified Director Academics, Dr. K. Ramamurthy Sir, and all our erudite resource persons, Dr. Anita Devi Pillai Ma'am, Dr. Darshana Samaraveera Sir, Dr. Shweta Anthony Ma'am, and Dr. J. Mangerkarsi Ma'am, and our dynamic head of the department, Dr. A. Hazel Vabina Ma'am. I request all the dignitaries to take their respective seats on their dais. I request the dignitaries to take their respective seats on the dais.
It's time for us to honor our dignitaries with memento. I request our Director Academics, Dr. K. Ramamurthy Sir, to honor our resource person, Dr. Anita Devi Pillai, Senior Professor, Nanyang University, Singapore, with a memento as a token of gratitude. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I request Dr. Kavita ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to honor our resource person, Dr. Darshana Samaraveera, Deputy Director General, the National Institute of Education, Sri Lanka, with a memento as a token of gratitude. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I request our head of the department, Dr. A. S. Webina ma'am, to honor our Dr. Shweta Anthony, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi, with memento as a token of gratitude. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I request Dr. Vidya Prabha ma'am, Professor, Department of English, to honor Dr. J. Mangerkarsi, author and academic head, PG and Research, Department of English, Ethraj College for Women, Chennai, with memento as a token of gratitude. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Ms. Priyadarshini, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to honor our Director Academics, Professor Dr. K. Ramamurthy, sir, with a bouquet as a token of gratitude. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I request our Director Academics, Dr. K. Ramamurthy, sir, to share his profound insights.
Good afternoon. The most respected chief guest of today's valedictory session on this international conference on Fiesta of the Mind, exploring food and English literature in interdisciplinary horizon, happened today. And head of the department, my dear colleagues, participants, dear student friends, I'm extremely happy to participate in this valedictory session of this one-day international conference. I'm indebted to the resource persons and guests who have accepted our invitation and come over here to make this event a grand success. On behalf of each and every one of us, I thank them for having contributed for enrichment of some literature knowledge in the minds of our students and participants. Thank you very much, sir and madams. In fact, when I was discussing about this particular topic with HOD madam, she told about the importance of food in the literature. I was wondering how this food will be connected with this literature. I was wondering, is there connection? Is there any connection between the literature and food? Any idea? Idea? Do you have any idea? Food, how the literature or food will be connected with the literature? Any idea? No, I am new to this. No, I am totally new person in this perspective. That is what I am asking you.
Emotions, sir.
Emotions. Food is emotion or literature is emotion?
Both, sir.
Food is emotion.
Both, sir.
Both. Okay. Okay. Any other point? Okay. Let me put it this way. How this marriage is taking place? Hey, don't tell otherwise, no? Sir, we used to love and marry, sir. No. 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 How this marriage is taking place, or otherwise, earlier period, how this marriage started? A boy and girl marry each other on what basis? Still, only cultural basis. Agree with me? Only the culture makes the important factor in the marriage. Where this culture starts? The culture starts from the food. Agree with me? The culture starts with only food. So the food is the very, 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 very important and the most important part in our life. That makes the difference in our culture. Say, for example, if anybody taking non-vegetarian food, they never had any relation, the relationship or a marriage relationship with the non-vegetarian family. Correct? For your information, I tell you. One of the principals of the colleges in Coimbatore is a vegetarian family. What happened now? They wanted to have, the boy wanted to marry with the vegetarian family only. But they were not able to find a groom with the vegetarian background. At last, what happened now? That boy was not able to find a suitable girl to marry for the last 5 to 6 years. Which means what? Our culture mostly depend upon the food. It's a culture. When I was talking about this food, no, sometimes even when you go to Chennai, you cannot get food like Coimbatore. The people, when they come from Chennai to Coimbatore, they always look for the food in the Annapurna. When I meet the people, even from North India, the people used to want to have food at the Annapurna. Why? Because they wanted to taste that sambar, no? The idli, sambar and vada at Annapurna. Why? Even when I go, see, next week I am going to Jabalpur, Uttar Pradesh, where if I go there, I will get only roti. Correct? For the 2-3 days I will be there. So I feel when I will return and take the rasam sadam here. Correct? So our habit, our culture, our literature, everything starts from the food. Hence, the food is so important in the culture. The cultural difference is only starts from the food habit. I think that is the background. Because of that, you have chosen that particular topic. Am I right, madam? I don't know. See, because I am not a literature person, I do not know much about all these things. So that is why the topic was selected. But the culture is very important. That culture can be developed only through the literature. Literature starts from the culture. Culture starts from the. It is developed through the literatures. Okay. So the literature will be exhibited through the literatures. So whatever, see, when you go tour, no, when we go around the various places, mainly we will see how the people are eating, what is their vegetation habits, how they take food, what are all the kinds of food they are taking. These are all the things we used to see. See, I visited Malaysia once. Wherever we go, we used to get only non-vegetarian food, easily. It is costly food, is the vegetarian food. Madam, I think, am I right? Am I right, madam? I don't know. Maybe I may be seen only limited area. But when we go there, easily you will get the non-vegetarian food. But it is very difficult to get the vegetarian food. So we have to find a very, very crucial getting the vegetarian food over there. So the food makes the important in our life as well as in our culture. With this, I am very, very happy to say that the right personalities have been invited to enlighten all of the participants in this regard. Then as I was mentioning, once again I thank them for having come over here to share their expertise with regard to the literature and food and many other things. Thank you very much. I thank each and every one of you for having given me a wonderful opportunity to meet our guests. Morning we wanted to meet them because we had a lot of meeting in the morning, so I couldn't meet them. Now you have created an opportunity to meet them. And thank you for having invited me to participate in this valedictory function. Thank you very much. All the very best.
Thank you, sir, for your informative speech on food and literature. To bring this enlightening session to a close, I now invite Dr. G. Aruna ma'am, Organizing Secretary of this international conference, to propose the vote of thanks.
So, international conference is not just a meeting of minds, but a fusion of ideas, cultures, and dreams that shape a brighter tomorrow. Very good evening to one and all gathered here. On behalf of Dr. N.G.P. Arts and Science College and the Department of English, I'm extremely happy to express vote of thanks on this special occasion. Learning is a wonderful opportunity to chisel our minds and elevate the personal and collective growth. Program like this insightful conference provides us a platform to expand our knowledge and dwell into the subjects that may be new to us. I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to our enthusiastic scholarly group who not only decided their valuable time to join us, but also encouraged and inspired us to strive for greater achievements. On behalf of the Department of English, we are delighted to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished chairman of this prestigious institution, Dr. Nallaji Palniswamy sir, in his absence. And we are deeply grateful to our Madam Secretary, Dr. Daumaniti Palniswamy ma'am, for her unflinching support and incessant encouragement in all our endeavors. Thank you, ma'am. We sincerely thank our dynamic Director of the Professional Academic Development, Mrs. Madhuravi Palniswamy ma'am, for her belief in us and her continuous encouragement to progress and enhance our academic credentials. Thank you, ma'am. Next, we would like to thank our Reverend CEO, Dr. O.T. Boneshwaran sir, and Dr. P.R. Muthuswamy sir, Director Academics, Dr. N.G.P. Educational Group of Institutions, for their immense support. Thank you, sir. And I owe my deep sense of gratitude to our astute resource persons today, Dr. Shweta Antony ma'am, Dr. Anita Devi Pillai ma'am, Dr. J. Mangai Karsi ma'am, and Dr. Darshana sir. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. We extend our in-depth gratitude to our respected principal of Dr. N.G.P. Arts and Science College, Dr. S. Saravanan sir, for empowering us to achieve remarkable success and aggrandize our boundaries beyond imagination. Thank you, sir. We also thank our Director Academics, Dr. K. Ramamurthy sir, for his academic support and timely guidance in every step of our journey towards success. His encouragement and positivity inspire us in all our endeavors. Thank you, sir. I wholeheartedly render my special thanks to our Reverend and Honorable Dean, Research and Development, Dr. K. Kalimuthu sir, for his endless support in all our academic assignments. Thank you, sir. And a successful conference is a testament to the hard work, vision, and determination of a leader who not only organizes but inspires every person involved in the conference. So now I would like to thank our most dignified, erudite head of the Department of English, Dr. Hazel Verbina ma'am, for her constant support and guidance, which ignited a spark of inspiration and power, our zeal to make this conference a great success. Thank you, ma'am. I wholeheartedly thank the deans of various portfolios for their guidance, and I extend our sincere gratitude to our administrative officer, heads, and all the sapient staff members of the Department of English for their support in making this event a great success. I thank all the academicians and our research scholars and our dear UG and PG students of our department and the participants from various reputed institutions for making the conference highly remarkable and productive. On behalf of the Department of English, I appreciate all your efforts for joining us and sharing your knowledge in the International Conference 2025. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Finally, let us all rise as we end this session on a patriotic feel with the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलति तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जाहे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगल नायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
I wholeheartedly thank all the versatile dignitaries on the dais for generously accepting our invitation of our international conference on Fiesta of the Mind, exploring food and literature in interdisciplinary horizon, and for their honorable presence. Thank you everyone for your gracious presence and enthusiastic participation. Have a wonderful day ahead. I request all the participants to collect their certificates from the MOC desk. I repeat, I request all the participants to collect their certificates from the MOC desk.